Part 119. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1199. The hunters seemed to be carved out of the same mold, with eyes, ears, mouths, and noses as cold as iron, and high cheekbones. Wearing ink-black gloves, they invaded the city like locusts. Neo looked angry, pressed his feet deeply on the tall building, kicked hard, and his whole body was ejected like a cannonball. Layers of sound barriers erupted behind him. He raised his fists high and his body was as straight as a gun as he rushed into the hunters. In the virtual world, Neo has become invincible under Yi Lin's guidance. No hunter is Neo's enemy. In the blink of an eye, thousands of hunters are killed by Neo alone. The army was defeated. Neo's figure was like a drop of white ink falling on a black cloth, clear and dazzling. Bella has been having a strange dream for a long time. There was a down-and-out middle-aged man in the dream. He was strong, optimistic, humorous, and kept himself clean. He never went to the green light district to have fun. He lives in a slum but faces life positively. Unemployed 36 times a year, each blow could not break his back and make him compromise with the cruel reality. In Bella's dream, the man's facial features were hazy and could not be seen clearly. But the moment Bella saw Neo, in her memory, in her dream, the man's face seemed to be parting through the mist, looking up at the blue sky. "Man, it's Neo. Neo." For a moment, Bella forgot about the grief of her grandfather's death. After shouting, she flew towards Neo at high speed as if she was possessed. Oops. The ferocious face in the sky, like a god or a demon, occupies the sky. Neo looked up, his expression grim. He knew that this was what the boss said, their biggest enemy and the #1 public enemy of mankind, Nemesis, is God. It's finally here. With one punch, as soft and strong as layers of mountains, Neo pushed out a passage among the hunters. The number of hunters can no longer be described by pure number. The hunters crowded together have the same face, like products infinitely copied by 3D printing. Wearing dark clothes, they look like twisted and profound figures. The black quagmire, Neo is struggling to survive in the quagmire. He punched a hole in the quagmire and was about to retreat temporarily when a familiar voice came from behind him. "Neo." Neo turned around. It was a strange woman, a woman he had never seen before. Wearing a white windbreaker and sunglasses, he has a thin figure. Plop, plop, plop. Neo's heart beat unsatisfactorily. Ah, the throbbing feeling. Bella actually felt the same way. This feeling is very strange. The two have never met before, but at the same time they have the illusion that they have met each other too late. Bella conveys L's retreat instructions to Neo. Neo nodded. Ever since he became an awakened person, he had no doubts about his boss's decision. He reached into his pocket and took out a palm-sized mobile phone. Beep beep beep. He pressed a series of 16-digit instructions, which was the transmission code given to him by his boss. Group teleportation. Times have changed, and methods of escape have become more advanced. Call out. The real world has perished, and their mobile phones no longer have the log-out function. Yi Lin made a slight improvement and made a teleport code. Once entered, it can be teleported to the designated escape point. City D. On the block. After Xingguo destroyed the world, Yi Lin spent a lot of time turning this world into his own territory. But not long ago, Nemesis side fell here again, and Yi Lin could clearly feel that Nemesis's authority was regaining control of the world. Bit by bit, he felt like his results of hard work were being gradually taken away. This is also the reason why Yi Lin immediately recalled Bella and Neo. Tens of thousands of awakened people were on standby in the upper block. There was a strange atmosphere between Bella and Neo. They looked solemn and exchanged glances. They stepped into Yi Lin's villa side by side and came to the garden. The sky is full of grey and thick clouds, like ink stains spread on rice paper, dirty and distorted. Looking up, the clouds and ink in the sky seem to be within reach, close at hand, as if you reach out, your hands will be stained black. But only in the sky above Yulin, in the center of the thick clouds, beams of bright sunshine fell next to the man. Yulin was sitting in the garden, tea smoke was floating on the table, curling up. Yulin was holding a book with no words on the cover and it was blank. On the other side of the table, a girl with short silver hair held her chin in her hands and looked straight at Yulin, who was concentrating on reading, without blinking. Only him was reflected in her pupils. Several white doves rested on Yulin's shoulders. The whole scene gave Neo and Bella a sense of Taufakuman. They didn't even dare to make a sound to destroy this beautiful scene. They didn't dare to ruin the gorgeous style of this man. You are here. Yulin looked up and smiled slightly. Before he closed the book, Neo glanced at it. It was clearly a blank piece of paper. He didn't know what the boss was looking at, he was mumbling. What surprised Bella and Neo was that the moment Yulin spoke, the feeling of sacrosanctity disappeared. It's like a high-altitude god descending into the human world, penetrating deeply into the masses, gaining a sense of intimacy out of thin air, and settling into reality. They don't know that this is the difference between divine and human. The sunlight slowly converged, and finally converged into a ray, blooming into dots of light powder on Yulin's forehead, and dissipated into the void. The process of closing is like a countdown. Yulin closed her eyes, and the experiences she had experienced over the years quietly came to her mind. Yulin experienced 3 reincarnations and lost her beloved Seorugjiu. Fighting in hell for thousands of times, we arrive at the only true one. 10 years of real life, simulating hundreds of millions of times in nightmares, killing the supervisor with my own hands, and breaking the closed loop of despair. The 4 nights of the apocalypse arrived as promised, and the eternal night fell. Yulin transformed into a nightmare knight, but was unable to break the shackles set by the masters. He could only escape from 11er paradise with his friends. Back in the Caribbean, Yulin concentrated on development, but was chased by Nemesis again, destroying the world and scattering with his friends. Abandoning her physical body, and with green secret cheating, Yulin was reborn in the outer universe of Nemesis with a drop of the blood of the entropy beast. She wandered for 50 years, met her sister, and understood the universe as a machine. When the spark came, Nemesis made a second decisive blow, destroying Yulin's blood incarnation with an attack that destroyed the planet, forcing Yulin to rely on her pure mental state to live in Nemesis's virtual universe. Become a ghost in the virtual world. Call. After remembering for a moment, bits and pieces of the past quietly touched the tenderness deep in Yulin's soul, but it did not make much change in his expression. After he breathed a sigh of relief, he smiled at the cautious Bella and Neo. You all feel like you know each other, right? Bella and Neo were stunned when they heard this. Can the boss even see through people's hearts? Human beings are extremely weak creatures. Yulin stretched out his index finger and moved it in the void. 2 humanoid silhouettes glowing with light appeared between Yulin, Neo and Bella. He explained, you 2 people, one lives in the virtual universe and the other lives in the real universe. Although you are in different dimensions, there is a hateful guy who secretly binds you together. Some physicists once micronized this phenomenon and called it quantum entanglement. I call this connection theory. You are connected to each other, but you don't know each other. Under normal circumstances, you can never meet because there is a dimension between you. I'm sorry to tell you that even if you have thousands of objections, I can be sure that it was Nemesis who created you. Void and real, true and false, inside and outside. 2 universes, 2 dimensions. The world will revolve around you. You are a perfect match, but you are destined to never see each other again. Now, you meet. As Bella and Neo looked at each other in shock and disappointment, Yulin held their hands and folded them up and down. The shock was due to the shocking secret Yulin revealed. They were disappointed because their throbbing was not the so-called love at first sight, but God's teasing. In an instant, a hole appeared in the chests of the two of them. In the terrifying holes, there was a strange fragment suspended in each. Yilin squinted her eyes and smiled, stretched out her hand to take a shot, and the two fragments merged into one in mid-air. It seems to be a mosaic made up of countless squares, and the shape of the key can be vaguely distinguished. It hides the core of the world here. Yilin moved too quickly and dug into their chests, leaving them unable to react. When they came back to their senses, the holes in their chests seemed to be closed, and they were tightly sealed. There was no difference at all on the surface. They couldn't even understand what Yilin had taken from their bodies. So fast. When the two looked at each other again, the love-like throbbing not long ago was gone. This made Bella and Neo breathe a sigh of relief, but at the same time, they felt a little sad in their hearts. Worrying about gains and losses is the human heart. Their strange hormones were connected under the influence of the half-world key. When the keys in their bodies were taken out by Yilin at the same time, the connection between them was no longer there. In layman's terms, they separated the two universes of virtual and reality, just like the male and female protagonists of the dual universes of District 11. They should have had a vigorous sadomasochistic love, or an encounter across time and space, but these, in Yilin, thanks to the intervention, all the stories had no time to happen, and they became strangers again. Staring blankly at Neo's face that was no longer familiar to her, Bella was in a daze for a moment, then suddenly covered her face and burst into tears. The collapse of an adult happened at a certain moment. She had just lost her grandfather not long ago. She was trying to hold it back, but this feeling of being hollowed out suddenly made her unable to hold back and cry. Neo thought it was his face that frightened the little girl, and he was at a loss what to do. Now is not the time to be sad. Yilin looked up at the sky. It's coming. A ferocious face, blocking out the sky and the sun, invaded here from the end of the virtual world like a boundless darkness, overlooking Yilin from high above. Long time no see, Nemesis. Yilin gave a friendly wave to Teacher Nai. Source C. Lower level. In a sunken world without an owner. The world was infected with scarlet color, and all creatures in the world were asleep in their dreams, and there was deathly silence. The twisted and ominous scarlet, like substance, turned into a sea, and wailing people were floating and sinking in the scarlet sea. They were either crying, laughing, sad, happy, angry, sad, or joyful. They tasted different things in their dreams. Vicissitudes of life. This was originally a bustling city, with tall buildings and giant trees protruding from the surface of the scarlet mist, like a jungle. The world has long been immersed in scarlet and reduced to a lonely land. And in the middle of the scarlet ocean, an illusory throne made of scarlet aura, as huge as a mountain, as real as it is illusory. In the throne, twisted faces were floating and sinking inside. On the mountain-like throne, sat a woman wearing a blood-red cloak. The woman was tall and slightly larger than a human being. Sitting on the huge nightmare throne, she looked so petite. However, this disharmony of proportions gives people a sense of this is how it should be. The woman has wavy curly hair and a lazy smile on her fair face. A boring dream. The woman's eyes were narrow, with a frightening red light shining inside. The red lip color is charming but not vulgar. So boring. On the woman's slender fingertips, a small bottle was slowly turning. She stared at the sleeping little man in the bottle, snickering from time to time, and would secretly stick out her slender tongue to lick it while no one was around. The Lord has no gender. But from the moment Cher called her sister Green, Green felt that there was nothing wrong with being a sister. Boring. Licking. It's so boring. Licking again. It's so boring. Licking. I really want to eat the delicious nightmare sandwich cake. Green was lying on the throne, pouting his red lips, knocking on the small bottle dissatisfied and complaining, "If I had known you wouldn't take care of your body, I would have suffocated me to death." She just complained. I don't know how many years have passed. This world is her temporary occupation. In fact, even if she didn't come here, the sunken world would be eroded by the disorder hunters from below sooner or later without a captain. If she comes, she may still be able to extend the life of this world. The discord hunters dared not lay a hand on the overlord's temporary home. This is a good deed. Do one good deed a day and it's free. Green, who was calculating carefully, muttered to the empty void rather painfully. Free is not a good word for her. Day to day. Year after year. Time flies may be just a retrospective sentiment for humans, but for a high-dimensional creature like her, time can easily pass in the blink of an eye. Someday. Green, who was spinning the small bottle containing Yilin's corpse out of boredom, stopped, closed his narrow eyes, and the scarlet light disappeared. When he opened it again, Green's eyes were as red as blood and as hot as fire, as if they were hiding the greed of a hunter who had been dormant for a long time and finally waited for his prey to come to him. It finally started, he. The Omnic God has arrived. The divine power is so vast that Neo and Bella, as well as the tens of thousands of awakened people in the upper block, have been shocked speechless by this scene. This is the first time in their lives that they face the High God. Real God. The God who rules these two universes. They opened their eyes and saw the reality of the world. They were angry, they wanted revenge, and they were full of rage. But when the real nemesis showed this ferocious posture in the clouds, two as terrifying as the sun and the moon were revealed. When they opened their eyes, the anger in their hearts was instantly washed away, leaving only infinite fear. I wonder how humans can defeat such a terrifying God. Just one glance made all the awakened people understand the meaning of the word God. Even though Nemesis has not yet shown any power, its divinity is highly condensed, and even a trace of it is enough to impress humans. Don't be afraid, this guy's real body is not here, he is just bluffing. In a blink of an eye, Yilin reached the sky and came to the vast ugly face. Compared with Nemesis's body, Yilin's size is like an ant and a big tree, and like a grain of rice and the scorching sun. We will never underestimate you again. Join, or perish. Nemesis once again declared victory in advance. Yilin smiled and raised 3 fingers, using your logic, this is called things can only be done in 3 steps, right? The situation changed, and iron ropes and steel bars appeared out of thin air, converging into a huge mechanical body. Nemesis's voice was neither happy nor sad, and it did not answer Yilin's words. Do you think that taking away one of our virtual worlds can make up for the gap between you and us? Take away. Yilin holds the key to the world, and her right hand changes from reality to void. Half of her hand is submerged into the void, and she doesn't know where it goes. Do you still remember, Yilin asked Teacher Nai with a smile, what will happen if the information contained in the entire world is compressed into the ultimate moment, and then multiplied 100 times? The same word seemed familiar. The answer is, art. The steel divine body and dark cloud surrounding Nemesis suddenly stopped. The space around it is filled with square mosaics. Seemingly shocked. In a moment of shock, the space around Nemesis changed. Same moment. Different dimensions. The virtual world and the nightmare throne at the lower level of the origin sea. Yilin and Green laughed at the same time. Green, have a wonderful night. Yilin, I wish you a wonderful night. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1200. When Yilin taught Neo the so-called virtual world rules. Illusion is reality, reality is illusion. There are countless connection points between the two universes, which can not only depend on each other, but also convert each other. You must understand this first, even if it is only superficial, then you have the qualifications to stand by my side. Boss, With all due respect, I don't understand. In layman's terms, when someone hits you, you should transform into virtual, and when you hit someone, you should immediately transform into real. Boss, I feel, you seem to have a bug. It seems you are beginning to understand. It's not me who is stuck in the bug, but Nemesis. Within its closed world, it can be both real and virtual, immortal and nearly invincible. This is also what it was designed to do. The ingenuity of the double-layered universe. Design. Otherwise, as the god of omnic machines, Nemesis cannot be born out of thin air, and this universe cannot appear after its birth. It was Nemesis who occupied the magpie's nest and took control of it. Here. Boss, who are you? Want to know? Haha, it's not impossible to tell you. Beyond the universe, there is a vast ocean. The world, planet, and universe you know are just a lonely ship sailing in the vast ocean. In other words, it's a capsized boat. And I'm an outsider from outside this universe. Neo was silent. The topic seems heavy. Don't worry, I will become another Nemesis in the end, because I can't take anything away. Call. If you could, what kind of world would you like to create? Boss, I want to create a world where everyone will be basked by the sun when they wake up. Neo closed his eyes and thought of the dream and the thin woman in the dream, and added, also, a world where everyone has enough to eat and smiles. The world of illusion. District 11. Yilin confronts God in a weak posture of mental state. God is indifferent to all living beings and is aloof. Before Nemesis, Yilin's body was like a humble ant. But it was this little ant that caused Nemesis's operating logic to pause for a moment when he said those words. In short, the machine is jammed. What is he going to do? Going to explode again? Nemesis calculated an obvious answer. But why? This kind of strategy kills 1,000 enemies and damages 8,000. Illogical. You know, now Yilin, after the blood incarnation was destroyed, can only rely on the virtual universe to survive. Once there is no virtual universe, Yilin's ghost has no place to rely on and can only die completely. This is also the reason why Nemesis came here in no hurry. Even though Yilin escaped again and again, each time becoming more miserable, and finally reduced to pure information and data, Nemesis never wavered. Because Yilin ended up in this tragic situation, which made Nemesis confirm that Yilin had nowhere to escape. This is their territory. They even still have the slightest idea of winning over Yilin. It is said that when humans are struck again and again, they will develop an emotion called despair. Once humans in despair are given a choice called life-saving straw, according to Nemesis's calculations, Yilin there is a 43.6% probability that in order to survive, they will choose to turn against each other, run into the arms of Nemesis, and become one of them. This is Nemesis's logic. This is unreasonable. This is not right. This is not in line with human nature. Etc. Human nature? After the tangled Nemesis re-added an inhumane calculation variable, it instantly overturned the previously calculated results and came to a new conclusion: Yilin now has no humanity. In the sky. That ugly and ferocious face, steel squirmed violently like living flesh, and Nemesis's voice came, "What are you now?" "You guess." Yilin would not tell it stupidly. In a brief moment of less than a tenth of a second, Yilin used the key to open the cockpit of the world in Area 11. In the cockpit, data flows down like a waterfall, creating a scene full of science fiction. A translucent square cockpit was located in the center of the room. Data streams converged in the center of the room to form a strange blonde woman with flawless features. She watched Yilin's invasion and interacted with the driver through the small hole. Nemesis looked at each other outside the cabin, with a hint of helplessness on his cold features. There was nothing she could do. Because the core of the world has been taken away. Yilin is now the captain of the world ship in Area 11. She is the navigator of District 11. The embodiment of the will of the world. If the navigator had human nature, she might have felt aggrieved by the Minotaur or shy and stimulated by the fact that Yulin had taken away the key to the world and the captain's throne had changed hands. Unfortunately, she was not the one. So the navigator could only bow to Yulin and said indifferently, "Hello, Captain." Yulin's hand that reached into the cockpit melted like asphalt. The sticky asphalt dripped into the cockpit, and in an instant it turned into a dark humanoid. On the surface of the humanoid, irregular data streams flowed, heading straight towards the navigator. "Walk away." The navigator calmly closed his eyes. The humanoid stretched out his hand and inserted it into the navigator's chest. The asphalt-like liquid instantly submerged the navigator, and the humanoid form and the navigator merged into one. After a period of distortion, the navigator, covered in a strange black asphalt-like substance, deformed, died, and turned into another urine. Navigator Yulin opened his eyes again. In a vibrato tone, he said, "I am L." After saying that, Navigator L pressed his hand on the rudder. "I've been waiting for you to come." Yulin grinned happily. "If you didn't come, Area 11 would have become an independent area, and I wouldn't be able to enter other areas. But you finally came, and I'm really, so happy." While Yulin was talking. Area 11 in the real world. On the scorched earth and in the sky cracked, the earth collapsed, and the cracked land plates were compressing crazily towards a certain point at a speed visible to the naked eye. Hot magma gushes from the ground and swallows everything. Inside the ark, the old man still had a satisfied smile on his face, and the blood on his chest had long dried up. Amid the vibration, his body slid down from the side of the illegal port hatch. Hot magma poured into the main ark base from all directions, completely engulfing the old man's body. This situation is just as he said before. Every life must be meaningful in this era. Even if the meaning of each person's life is so small, once these tiny sparks gather on one person, they will eventually erupt into anger that can sting the eyes of gods. When the real world starts to crumble, the virtual world is collapsing at the same time. Holes appear in different corners one after another, compression, expansion, cracking, distortion, all imaginable and unimaginable spatial changes are happening in every corner at the same time. You turned yourself into a virus. At this point, Nemesis still had no idea what was going on. This is Yulin's real purpose of sneaking into its universe. What he did was not a forced escape, nor was it pure destruction, but a decisive move to abandon everything and completely transform himself into another existence. He turned himself into a data virus named L. Yulin didn't leave any escape route for herself, well, except for the bottle in Green's hand. Once he fails, he will be completely imprisoned in Nemesis's virtual universe, well, unless Green comes to the rescue unscrupulously. In short, except for Green, Yulin really has no backup plan. He is equivalent to putting everything in himself and everything in 11 Paradise into the hands of the Nightmare Master Green. This is a big gamble. Mistakes will lead to more mistakes. After activating the self-destruction program of the world ship, in front of Nemesis, Yulin held his palm flat with the key of the world spinning on it. Yulin suddenly clenched his fist hard, the key to the world silently shattered into powder. Destroy the world. Nemesis, I don't even care about my life, I don't even deserve to be a living being. I dare to give up everything. Why do you fight me? A certain realm. Someday. A corner. The color of the sky and clouds seems to remain unchanged, always showing lifeless gray and black. On a mountain that looks like a rugged knuckle, at the top of the highest finger mountain, a unique female demon sits casually and looks into the distance. Beside her, two sheathed long knives were stacked on top of each other, her cold eyes were as sharp as knives, and there was a trace of dried green blood on her left cheek. Look up, the wind is blowing. The cold and furious wind picked up all kinds of corpses at the foot of the mountain and scattered them in all directions, some of them blowing towards the female demon on the top of the mountain. Wow! The female demon's back bulged, and her dark and ugly wings stretched out to block her body. Clang 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 clang. The pieces that were obviously corpses struck the bent single wing, making the sound of gold and iron clashing. At the foot of the mountain, dozens of kilometers in radius were covered with the corpses of various demons. The cutting edges of the fragments were sharp, and they had obviously been scraped alive with sharp knives. Come out. After the female demon finished speaking, on the other knuckle of the five-finger mountain, a blazing pillar of fire rolled high into the sky out of thin air, and a charming demon stepped out of the flames. Miyamoto Reinwuo. Yanluo. Both parties say each other's names. It turned out to be Mai Oda, who had been away for some time. It is a coincidence that the devil meeting Oda Ball at this moment is that Queen Yanluo was repeatedly ravaged by Yilin using the big finger technique. Grand Duke, I want to see you in Meteor Street before the blood moon rises. No time. Oda Mai refused without looking back. Haha, Yanluo covered her mouth and smiled charmingly. This is not a summons, but an order. Okay, I will go see him. Oda Mai picked up the knife and put it on his waist. Queen Yanluo is preparing to leave. Oda Mai didn't know when she stood in front of her, with her back facing her. Yanluo was stunned. What caught her eyes was the devil star, who was rising like the star of tomorrow, slowly sheathing the sword at his waist. Oda Mai looked back and smiled lightly. At this moment, this smile made the lifeless world as bright as spring. Next time, before you speak to me, please add, Master Reinwuo in front of your words. Click. Sheathed. Laugh. Yan Lufang felt severe pain, her wings were broken, and pillars of blood shot up into the sky. Another world. The sword is the most important thing here. The top of Longhu Mountain. On the 7-star sword altar, the finals of the gate discussion ceremony are in progress. Senior brother, Zuch Kingwei, the supreme disciple of the sect leader, looked at the newcomer in front of him with a smile. Zuch Kingwei is a 7th-generation disciple, with high seniority, outstanding talent, and extremely high reputation in the sect. And the newcomer in front of me. Tisk. Li Chang on Sunset Mountain. Zuch Kingwei was disdainful. He had heard of many deeds of this disciple, but he was nothing more than a sensationalist. Li Changa, this person has been practicing for 3 years. He does not mention cultivation, does not take pills, and concentrates on understanding the state of mind. It is said that Li Changa's understanding even surprised his master and looked at him differently. However, in a world where the sword is the most important thing, there is only understanding, not cultivation. Hey, what's the use of this state of mind? Useless. 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 The elders, the supreme leader, and the chiefs of each mountain came here with their swords in hand and sat down calmly. There was total silence. The discussion begins. The green-shirt Taoist boy cried loudly and lifted the curtain. Behind the curtain is the test question of this discussion. The dried thick ink dropped 2 big characters of Luan Xiang and Feng Zhu on the off-white rice paper in advance. Asked the sword. Senior brother Long Hushan raised his eyebrows lightly, and calmed down his secret path. With a snap of his finger, a simple and beautiful sword enlarged from the center of his eyebrows and floated to the side. Flowers rained down from the sky, and all the disciples watching were in an uproar. When it comes to swords and swords, naturally a sword is indispensable. This sword is called Flower in the Mist. Please show me the sword, junior brother. There's no rush. Li Changa shook his head calmly, with a humble smile on his face. Senior brother, please go first. Then senior brother asked first, what is a sword? Li Changa smiled and said nothing. What are you pretending to be? The scene was awkwardly silent for 2 sticks of incense, and the senior brother secretly cursed, if you don't understand, just say it clearly, why bother dragging me into the water with you and humiliating this person? So the senior brother gently moistened his throat and began to explain his understanding of the way of swordsmanship. A sword can be a sword, but it is a sword. If there is a sword, it seems like there is no sword. If there is a sword, there is no action. Without a sword, there is action. If there is a sword, it is good. A good way is not as good as a good sword, 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 real sword. It was full of eloquence, flowers and rain were falling. The senior brother's sword had not yet been unsheathed, but the sword's meaning was still hidden, and the words he spoke were like the Sanskrit sounds of the great avenue, profound and obscure, and seemed to hide the truth. After a lecture, the elders present could not help but twirl their beards and nod their heads, with hidden praises hidden in their brows. As for the rest of the disciples, they gradually got better and better before the senior brother's explanation of the Sword Sutra in simple and easy to understand terms. Li Changa sat cross-legged not far away, listening quietly, sometimes frowning, sometimes nodding, sometimes shaking his head, sometimes sighing, listening intently. His expression was so complicated that the senior brother couldn't help but be distracted by Li Changa's rich expression as he spoke. The more he spoke, the more erratic he became. When the elders also sensed something was wrong, the senior brother suddenly stopped and looked at the 5 sticks. The incense was about to burn out, and he chuckled at Li Changa and said, "Junior brother, why are you shaking your head? Could it be that there is something wrong with what senior brother said?" Li Changa closed his eyes tightly and remained motionless. Everyone knows that this boy never plays his cards according to common sense. Just like the applauded protagonist in secular unofficial history novels, he behaves in a normal way. The disciples sighed and held their breath, looking at Li Changa's eyes with a little more expectation, expecting this rising star to speak some different sword principles. Huh, huh, huh. Until the handsome Li Changa snored heavily and fell asleep. A long time. When Zuch Kingwei almost couldn't help but get angry, Li Changa opened his eyes and woke up. He stretched and stood up. He had a dream. It's time. Li Changa smiled, breathed a sigh of relief, and waved to Zuch Kingwei, "Goodbye, senior brother, no, never again." "Wait. Where are you going?" "Huh? I'm leaving." Li Changa turned around and bowed deeply to the elders and headmaster. "Thank you for your teachings during this time." Zuch Kingwei was unhappy. "The discussion is not over yet." "Ha, you don't understand, it's over." Li Changa stroked his bangs and smiled slightly. "That's ridiculous. Where's your sword?" "Look, aren't you just asking?" Li Changa said calmly and pointed at Zuch Kingwei. "Your sword is in front, and mine is in my heart. I win. Take your seat." The old people looked shocked. After a moment, all the old people burst into laughter. Li Changa stepped into the fog and walked away, gradually getting further and further away. His loud singing voice came from the wind, toneless but sonorous and powerful. "I have a sword. In my heart. Point to the sky. Look at the world. Beheading is unfair. Stop hesitating. You killed all the gods in the sky. Lord, I hug my head and cry. Boss, yo boss. I, Li Changa, am back. Deep in the insect swarm. Wrapped in a cocoon. Reliable news has been received that the Spider Queen is now in the critical period of molting. We must attack the entire army when the Spider Queen is at her weakest, and annihilate the Spider Queen's Zerg army in one fell swoop. Once the Spider Queen breaks out of her cocoon and is reborn, with the Zerg's reproduction speed and the Spider Queen's wisdom, we humans will never have peace. For humanity. For the future of mankind. Salute. Fight to the death. Roar. After mobilizing before the war, the human warriors resolutely embarked on the road of no return. Starry sky. The mighty fleet of the Galaxy Fleet Alliance surrounded the N14 galaxy, the Gamma Nebula, one of the planets filled with acid. They received reliable information that 2 years ago, the Spider Queen turned into a cocoon and entered a deep sleep. No wonder the Zerg have made no movement in the past 2 years. They have been defending instead of attacking, and they are getting more and more stubborn as they fight. Around the acid planet, huge insect eggs form a circle of stars, and billions of insectoids are quietly dormant on the periphery of the planet. Starship fleets' attack elicited a violent reaction like water dripping on boiling oil. The insect eggs burst open, and the ferocious insects pounced towards the galaxy fleet. Within the planet, 50,000 miles underground, deep inside a giant cocoon with a diameter of about 30 meters, there is a vague shadow of a naked figure, which is convex and concave. The flames of the explosion flickered in and out of the sky like blooming stars. The remains of insect-blooded insects, with heavy casualties, were like falling stars, evaporating in mid-air like mist. This war between humans and Zerg lasted for 2 years. Inside the giant cocoon, Xiao Chuer's eyebrows trembled slightly. She had a dream. Dreaming. A dark red bat flew in an enchanting manner. The bat chirped, saying the same sentence over and over again in an excited tone. Come back quickly and start a group. Come back quickly and start a group. Come back quickly and start a group. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, Bai Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1201. Different world. Similar things happened one after another. Cyberpunk-style world. Suzayasu became the boxing champion. She punched the group, kicked the company, and fought her way through the world with one punch per person. The punching power is terrifying. She was alone, and she just started the revival of spiritual energy in a world with highly advanced technology, and people with superpowers are all over the world. Someday, Suzayasu, as the CEO of an energy company that controls the lifeline of the world's economy, as well as the president of the Superpower Association and the leader of the 5 Omega-level superpowers, faced the cameras of dozens of newspapers and tried his best to promote a superpower agreement on the control of superpowers. In front of everyone, Suzayasu, who was 1.99 meters tall, fell to the table with a thud. Boom. The long alloy table was severed in the middle by Suzayasu's headbutt. There was a gasp of air from the scene. Huh, huh, huh. Suzayasu snored. She fell asleep. In dreams. There is a bat. Tell her to go home and play in a group. Alien battlefield. This is a deserted star death place that is extremely unfriendly to humans. In the whole world, there is only one fat person named Ler. The rest are all weird and strange beasts. There are insects, giant beasts, dragons, and flying kites. Savage, bloody, cruel. The most terrifying thing is the deep sea. There are terrifying monsters in the deep sea that even Li Erpang can't see through. Dragging a monster corpse, Li Erpang opened his bloody mouth and devoured it alive until he was full. A bat stood quietly on Li Erpang's shoulder. Li Er was a fat man and was about to grab the bat and stuff it into his mouth when he suddenly shuddered. This won't work. A strong sense of dying came to my mind. He suddenly had the illusion that if he really dared to eat this bat, he would die. Damn it, fat man, let's play in a group. Bat avoided Li Erpang's palm that was frozen in mid-air in disgust, said a harsh word, and quickly moved away. Li Erpang opened his eyes, looking confused. It turns out I was dreaming just now. I almost died in the dream. He hasn't eaten enough yet, hasn't reached full level yet, isn't yet invincible yet, and now, he's starting a group. In the ancient jungle, inside the temple, a mysterious Ming-Shen ceremony is taking place. What is believed here is a thing called the Crimson God. Meng Qiaoqiang was wearing a brown coarse cloth monk's uniform. Under the shadow of his hood, his eyes were glancing left and right with a clever expression, which seemed incompatible with the devout monk's uniform he wore. I want to see what kind of broken god this is. Compared with other believers, Meng Qiaoqiang seems very casual. God, it's not like he's never seen it before. In fact, this is all the fault of the president. He flirts with the master when he has nothing to do, asks the gods to help take care of the children, and runs around with the gods in his arms every day. This makes the members of the Apocalypse Guild feel uncomfortable when facing creatures of the level of gods. With absolutely no due respect, admiration, or fear. Hum, a mere god. The dim candle light flickered, and the other monks chanted the name of God. Base. 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 A strange red light emitted from the altar. The monks chanted in unison. Darker than dusk. Brighter than blood. Time keeps passing. Your strength endures. In your name. I swear in the dark. I will be your faithful believer. I beg you to guide us on the bright red holy path when we are lost. The red light was overwhelming, and an elegant and tall man, dressed like a human, walked out on the altar in the red light. Meng Qiaoqiang didn't expect that these believers would really call out the gods. He felt as if he was facing a formidable enemy. A clicking sound resounded on his body. He instantly activated the advanced version of Invulnerable to Glazed Body. Li Yulai Gesture. Defense Max. Full. SHH, don't be nervous. I am the Crimson Tamer who is affiliated with the Nightmare Troop under Master Green. The visitor raised his index finger to his mouth, feeling very angry. Ah, this. Only then did Meng Qiaoqiang see the other person's face clearly. He looked very similar, but there was something different about him. His eyes were extremely thin, his mouth was extremely long, and his grin was sinister, which made Meng Qiaoqiang feel creepy. With an elegant smile and a pair of golden single-sided frames on his left eye, he looked like a pampered aristocrat. After being stunned for a moment, Meng Qiaoqiang stepped forward and put his hand on the opponent's shoulder. It turns out that he is the younger brother of Green, the president of my family. If you had told me earlier, I would have been able to dominate and enjoy being the protagonist for once. Why didn't you show up earlier? Tisk, tisk, tisk. You're so unethical. Do you understand what it means to be human and worldly? Do you understand what it means to observe people's emotions? The believers kneeling in an arc formation around the altar suddenly trembled and were too frightened to move. Aha! With a flash of red light, all the believers fainted. The Crimson Beast Tamer said dissatisfied, "Can you give me some face in front of my believers? Anyway, I am also a god. Isn't he just a god?" Meng Qiaoqiang muttered in a low voice. When he heard that the other party was Green's god, his nervousness disappeared immediately. "So, Mr. Green, the president of my family, asked you to come here." Meng Qiaoqiang put away all laws cannot intrude on the glazed body and asked. "Here, Lord Green has a letter for you." The Crimson Beast Tamer threw out a letter with a bat-shaped cover on it. While Meng Qiaoqiang was muttering, the Crimson Beast Tamer was also muttering, secretly wondering how this guy's defense and resistance were maxed out. Lord Green couldn't let this guy fall asleep easily even when his true form couldn't reach here. This kind of outrageous resistance is rare among the gods. But another point is probably because Lord Green was busy licking the bottle all day long and was too lazy to argue with a sidekick, so he sent it to run errands. The Crimson Beast Tamer is a god no matter what, a tall god. After throwing out the envelope, he stepped back to the altar without saying a word and prepared to leave. "Wait a minute, don't be impatient." Meng Qiaoqiang didn't even have time to look. When he saw that the other party was about to leave, he quickly grabbed the other party's clothes. "Is something wrong?" Meng Chaoqiang adhered to the good moral character of Tiankai Guild and rubbed his fingers. Don't worry, getting to know each other is considered fate. You don't have any benefits that are insignificant to you, such as cheats, equipment, plugins, etc. skills and the like. Can you point them out evenly? Meng Chaoqiang said mysteriously, let me tell you secretly, our president has a great relationship with Mr. Green. The president's daughter calls Mr. Green's sister. At last, the Crimson Beast tamer, whose skin was peeled off, ran away and swore never to see him again for the rest of his life, the next life, or the afterlife. What kind of ghosts does Master Green have his eyes on? The eternal yellow sand remains unchanged. This is Dune. The most precious resource in the world is a strange mineral that can be used as energy. Deep in the yellow sand, Amorendi was alone, dragging a giant centipede body 2 kilometers long with one hand back to Gaia Fortress. Next to the fortress, a small oasis is lush and green, becoming the only source of water for Gaia Fortress. The 2-kilometer-long giant centipede looks huge, but the overlord of this world is actually a creature called Super Sandworm. This giant centipede is usually located at the lower reaches of the food chain. In short, it is the Super Sandworm. Food. Normally, it would take many punches to defeat a sandworm, but it only takes one punch to defeat a giant centipede. From this, it can be seen that this giant centipede is just an illusion, not useful. In the Gaia Fortress, the friends are busy. Gaia sounds the alarm. 3 long and 1 short, this is the clarion call for the return of the king. Everyone knows that Amorendi is back. Molly went out to greet her. In the hot desert, Molly was dressed coolly. Her lower body was wrapped in a short skirt sewn from animal skins, and her upper body was also sewn from animal skins. Her chest was slightly bulging. She had regained her confidence after growing up 3 times. I believe that one day, they will grow to a size that satisfies me and him. Grandfather. From a distance, Molly waved to Amorendi. Throwing the centipede corpse at the edge of the fortress, a ball of light floated out from Gaia's core, scanning light was emitted, and it began to scan the corpse for useful substances that could be utilized. The group of them lived in the desert for 6 years, and Molly grew from a girl next door to a homeless young woman. During the 6 years, they took root in several places and survived with difficulty. Today, earth-shaking changes have already taken place in Gaia Fortress. Gaia Fortress is the product of the fusion of the legendary item Gaia Core and the Snow Mountain Station. It is not just an ordinary base. Gaia Fortress can evolve independently. Viewed from a high place, the landscape of Gaia Fortress is completely different from before. The intertwined skeletons of the giant beast are as indestructible as keels, and the snow-white skulls of the giant beast are like huge bubbles. They are located in the fortress and have become unique workshops and leisure clubs. Over the years, with the help of the strange creatures here, Molly even developed a new technology tree, biotechnology. Based on this, biological implantation can already be used in mass-produced models. The combination of mechanical technology and biotechnology has bloomed a charm that even Molly is obsessed with. The crawler-type sweeping robot ran around the station to inform everyone about Amorendi's return. This mini-crawler sweeping robot is the new body of traveler Meng Xingfen. Over the years, 2 men and women from the sea, Ruth and Meng Xingfen, have gradually integrated into this group. After they became registrants, although they could not enter the other world to experience, there were many props and skills in the warehouse. They each chose their own my favorite outfit, it has good combat effectiveness. The friends walked out of the fortress, each dressed like a savage, happily carrying tools and forklifts, and stepped forward to help the enemy carve up the corpses. Gaia will analyze the useful parts of the corpse, which parts can be used for research, which parts can be used for construction, which parts have high nutritional value, which parts can be made into soap. In this way, the corpses of alien beasts can be arranged. It must be understood clearly that the dead centipede beast will be put to the best possible use, nothing will be wasted, and it will die in peace. There was a palm-sized patch on Molly's smooth and white back. The patch is neither gold nor iron, and has a dark red meat film on the surface. The fleshy membrane bulged, and thin tentacles protruded from the transparent fleshy membrane. The tentacles were twisted into two strands, and two colorful butterfly wings spread out, supporting Molly's body and flying in the air. When her wings flickered, 7 colored pollen sprinkled around her. Under the sunlight, the 7-colored halo was as gorgeous as a rainbow. Others are already familiar with this scene. Since Molly invented biotechnology, she has made many practical gadgets. In fact, Molly was a little resistant to biotechnology at first, but she couldn't bear it because the functions are too practical and it really smells good. Rendi wiped the slight sweat on his forehead and prepared to go back to rest. At this time, Molly, who was flying in the air like a small butterfly, was shaken and fell straight down. In mid-air, Molly's limbs drooped, her eyes closed tightly, and she floated slowly down. Biotechnology has an anti-fall death insurance, so you won't die if you fall, but Lao Mo still hurriedly caught his good granddaughter. Take a breath, there's more. Lao Mo breathed a sigh of relief, and not long after, Molly woke up. What's wrong? It's not that we can't understand the fact that our good granddaughter suddenly fell asleep in broad daylight. She was so good at staying up late that she couldn't stay up any longer, but just now Molly wasn't tired at all. In this way, suddenly falling asleep made Rendi notice something strange. Molly was lying in her grandfather's arms, her pupils unfocused, and she seemed to be in a daze. After staying for a moment, Molly's eyes were filled with tears. Whoa! Others were so frightened that they gathered around. Molly was everyone's happy fruit, so she couldn't be wronged. Even Ruth, who didn't get along with Molly at first, nervously came up to her and secretly wondered what was wrong with the flat sister. Everyone is worried. Molly was crying. Before her tears were gone, she suddenly burst into laughter. He was crying and laughing at the same time, as if he was mentally ill, and it made others confused. "Grandpa, we are going back," Molly said through tears. "Go back," Rendi frowned suddenly. "That Hundan is probably in trouble. Let's fight back." Molly Kalanghu was in high spirits. A carp bounced out of Rendi's arms, flew high into the sky, raised his arms and shouted, "We're going to fight back." The rest of the guild were unkempt and covered in yellow sand. When they heard Molly's words, they were all stunned. For a moment, the area around Gaia Fortress was completely silent, except for the rustling sound of yellow sand. Gaia's emotionless voice sounded at an inappropriate time. "The coordinates are being locked and the transmission is about to be initiated. Transmission countdown, 60 seconds. Hey, hey, hey. It's all fun," Pangenji giggled, slowly poured water from the kettle, and combed his hair back with one hand. When he opened his eyes, Pangenji's expression was so stupid. He became extremely cold, with purple lightning hidden in his eyes, as if they were real. The corner of the Pangenji's mouth was raised, and a faint smile appeared from the corner of his mouth. "This is not going to be easy." Pangenji's sudden metamorphosis seemed to ignite everyone's emotions that had been suppressed for 6 years. In an instant, someone cried. Someone laughs. Someone took up arms. Some people took off their animal skins on the spot and put on their clothes. Someone had messed up Chicken Coop's hair and combed it back into an adult look. Wang Tiandi, who was chewing bones in his mouth and covered in filth, swelled 100 times. He raised his head to the sky and howled like a mad dog. He screamed and his taste changed inexplicably. Woof 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 woof, ow ow dash. 6 years. Thousands of words, spoken by humans and dogs, all converge into one sentence. Let's go home. Source C. Lower level. Nemesis's universe, from the outside, looks like mechanical structures like sarcoma. Suddenly, distortion, collapse, squeezing, and expansion all happen simultaneously in an infinitesimal point. After extreme compression and expansion, a black hole suddenly appeared. The stream of light rushed towards the black hole crazily, and then there was a moment of stillness. This is the Great Collapse. One of the corners exploded alive after a violent vibration, leaving a big hole. Sizzling. The indestructible, Nemesis superworld fleet was blown into a huge gap due to the destruction of the world in Area 11. Blue light flowed in crazily. The disorderly hunters are like hungry locusts, gathering into a huge white hand and greedily devouring everything within the universe. At the end of the starry sky, blue light, white palms, and the dark sky, the three colors cannibalize and push each other, staging a magical scene. That huge cave, starting from the planet in Area 11, spreads out into the infinitely distant starry sky in a fan shape. This entire corner was blown apart by the Great Collapse, and the solid world ship structure became an incomplete structure with 24 and 1 missing. The collapsed District 11. Within the virtual world, all things wither. Everything that is visible to the naked eye, or everything that is invisible, is like being erased at the moment when the world is shattered. Blocks of areas are broken down into a downward waterfall of data flow, and then disappear. Boss. This. Neo was already shocked and speechless by the tragic scene in front of him. Yulin was used to the scene of doomsday, but for Neo, Bella and others, this was the first time they had seen it. Even the word tragic could not describe the scene in front of her. The sky split open with thunder and lightning. Nemesis's face also became blurred. Its true body is not here, and it is too late to come here now. Yulin turned her back to Neo, seemingly reading Neo's thoughts, and smiled. The world is not black and white. Nemesis designed everything and made the two universes operate in an orderly manner. Under his management, you can live and work peacefully in the virtual world. And I will completely break your daily life and put the bloody reality before your eyes. Whether it's good or evil, I don't need anyone to judge me. You can't comment either. You are weak, so you can only go with the flow and witness the outcome of this war between gods with your own eyes. Is it because we failed to kill the gods but were raped, or pulled the gods down from their high thrones? As Yulin spoke, she clapped her palms together, and a rainbow-like virtual light bridge appeared under her feet, extending diagonally upwards, leading to the depths of the crack in the sky. We'll see. Bella asked blankly, where are you going? Slay God. The two words were said calmly, and the indifferent tone seemed to be talking about an after-dinner joke. Amid the laughter, Yulin stepped onto the rainbow bridge alone with determined eyes. Bored. God-killing road. He has seen the darkest night, so his heart is like steel and never wavers. Brother, sister is here. Neil, who had been silent all this time, followed closely behind. In her world, only her brother is left. She never asked her brother where he was going or what he was doing. Wherever her brother goes, she goes. The younger brother was unwavering, and she was even more unwavering. His brother's existence is like Neil's life. If her brother is lonely, she will accompany him until the end of the world. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1202. Yuren never judges herself in terms of good or evil. Too one-sided. His goals never changed. He just wanted to return to 11ER Paradise and let the disaster there end. I really don't want to become a natural disaster. But if it does happen, it can only be said to be the tears of the times and the helplessness of reality. How can we fight with God if we look forward and backward? On the Rainbow Bridge, Yulin moved forward quickly. The world disintegrates piece by piece behind you and is annihilated. Neo and Bella looked at each other. The initial throbbing in their hearts had long since disappeared, but at this time, they couldn't help but move closer to each other, held each other's hands, and followed Yilin to the Rainbow Bridge. Humanity is already like this. They also break jars and smash jars. They have seen the reality of the world. It's okay not to want such a world. Whether their future is destruction or light, they must live to the end to witness the outcome. Bella forced out a complicated and forced smile. Grandpa once said that the inheritance of mankind lies in the spirit. Even if only one person survives, someone needs to tell the history and pass on the spirit of the predecessors. So, I don't regret it. Neo lowered his head, remembering his own experience. The solemnity on his face disappeared, and he felt relaxed. Haha, I don't want to be unemployed every day anymore. Let's go. Let's go. Neo is the leader of the Awakened Alliance. The leader went first, and the rest of the awakened ones who opened their eyes to witness the reality under Yilin's instruction stepped onto the Rainbow Bridge one after another. Besides, this place is gone, so what can we do if we don't leave? Are you going to stay and wait to die? Along the way, they looked down at the ruined world. Data streams were being annihilated and red lightning was destroying every part of the world. This cruel and illusory scene made it difficult to associate it with the real doomsday. But in fact, Nemesis's virtual universe and the real universe are interdependent, and the collapse of the virtual world actually means that the real world is also dying. In the real universe, the armies of Omnics that invaded Area 11 were crushed into small dots, swallowed up instantly by the influx of disorderly hunters and sources, decomposed into the purest source, and reintegrated into the source sea. This situation reminds me of a word: circulation. The cycle of sources is endless. Sources will not increase or decrease out of thin air. Everything is in a cycle. After the rift, what greeted Neo and Bella was a bright sky, a bright day, and a warm wind. This is a peaceful world. District 10. The destruction of Area 11 was a last resort, but when Neo and Bella first arrived in a peaceful world, that entanglement resurfaced. When Bella and Neo were holding hands and struggling together, Yilin appeared in front of them and smiled slightly. Yeah, you are following. As he spoke, Yilin had a weird smile on his face, and made strange gestures with his hands. Do you have any special feelings? For example, you long for a wedding in place. Although the twins Neo and Bella didn't know what a bridal chamber was, Yilin's gesture was intuitive and clear, and Bella's face turned red with embarrassment. But for some reason, when Bella first arrived in District 10, she held Neo's hand and felt that her palm was getting warmer, hotter, and moister. The two hands suddenly bounced apart as if they were electrocuted. Neo calmed down a little. After closing his eyes and feeling for a moment, he said in surprise, I seem to feel it, I'll send some. Bella felt it even more deeply. After entering District 10, her whole heart fell on Neo. The feeling of being in love. But at this moment, somewhere in this area, there was another feeling of falling in love through the air. She was being pulled back and forth with Neo in front of her, as if she was falling in love with two people at the same time. Personal illusion, so weird. Sure enough, Yilin mused, in order to achieve more modular management, Nemesis made the layout of each area exactly the same. What's the meaning? Neo and Bella vaguely understood, but they didn't understand. Yilin smiled and said, this convinced me of one thing. Nemesis's universe is actually not only divided into two layers. There is a deeper place within the virtual universe and the real universe. It's called, the third level, that's where the center is, and Nemesis's true form is right there. Neo and Bella still don't understand. Sister, what about you? Yilin turned around and asked Neil. Neil thought for a moment. Neil has never been to other areas outside Area 11, but Neil once extracted a keyword from some deleted and unclean files, which belongs to the same restricted level as the Supreme Council, the center of all things. Yulin, sister, didn't you tell me earlier? Neil felt aggrieved. Brother, you didn't ask. Is there anything else? Alice type internal parameter brother. No. No, I mean, I remember. Brother is so nice, that's all. Neil smiled sweetly. Yulin calmly looked away and snapped his fingers. Bingo, that's right there. The center of all things. If I guessed correctly, the source energy cannon can also cause damage there. With a crisp finger snap, they flashed and arrived above a city. Neo was in mid-air, overlooking the city, looking at the steel and neon lights above the city, and recognized that this was the hellish city where he had lived for more than 30 years and was unemployed 36 times a year. Tens of thousands of awakened people were waiting in place. Yulin took Neo and Bella to the lower block. In a dilapidated apartment building, they found another Neo. Bella's whole body was messy, 2 Neos. This gave her a tangled feeling of not knowing who to pounce on deep in her heart. No. To be precise, when everyone is in this situation, they will doubt life and cannot tell what is true and what is false. Neo, who was lying on the bed soundly asleep, was instantly controlled by Yulin. Yulin mouthed at Neo, "Suck him." Neo frowned and didn't go up. Although it may be unreasonable to tell you the truth, if I guess correctly, even you standing here now are probably copies that were split from the center of all things. You have the same core data. After Neo was silent, he asked, "What will happen if we become one?" Yulin shook his head, "I don't know. But if you don't get along, you will definitely die." At this moment, Neo thought of the terrifying god. He could only reach out to Neo on the bed and insert his hand into his chest. In front of Bella's eyes, a shocking scene unfolded. The 2 Neos turned into data streams, intertwined like double strands of DNA, and then merged together. A new Neo appears. "How do you feel?" No, the new Neo put on his sunglasses with a calm expression. "He is me, I am me, it's all me." "Bella, that is to say, in the real world, there is also another me?" "Wait, my grandfather is still alive." Life and death, in front of God, are just one thought. Yulin closed her eyes, remembered the characteristics of the missing body, and said in a tone that made it difficult for others to detect emotions, "Sometimes, a person does not have the same thoughts. Memory, standing in front of you with the same voice, face, and smile, can be considered alive, that is, missing." "I don't understand." Bella shook her head vigorously, tears welling up in her eyes. "I want to see my grandpa." Yulin was about to agree, but suddenly raised her head. The sky was clear just a moment ago, but in a blink of an eye, the sky was covered by thick gray clouds, and cracks of light appeared in the sky. The hunter appeared from the sky and quickly locked onto Yulin and the others above. "It's coming." Yulin calmly waved his hand and led several people away from here. Yulin came to a busy street and reached out to pat a passerby. His palm was like melted asphalt, and when he ate it, the passerby turned into another Yulin in an instant. The newly appeared Yulin slapped a passerby again, and so on. Soon, the whole street became Yulin. An L to be precise. A virus named L. Mistakes will give birth to more mistakes. Yulin turned herself into a viral body and in this way quickly captured Area 10. A new battle has begun again, a gap has been opened outside the universe, and Nemesis is sparing no effort to fill that gap. Yulin will not let Nemesis get through this difficulty easily. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The logic of the machine is easy to understand. It is now in the response period and must not be allowed to react. This wave of group fighting must be fast and Nemesis will be killed in one wave. The fight is time. The fight is for the world. The replication speed of the L virus is beyond imagination, a speed more terrifying than an exponential explosion. Looking down from a high place, every corner of the virtual world in Area 10 is covered by a small white dot, attacking in all directions at a terrifying speed. turning the world into a white ocean in the blink of an eye. All over the world, it's all L. The whole process took about 10 minutes, and Yulin took initial control of Area 10. Next was the core. Bundles of invisible principles gathered at Yulin's fingertips. He was like a god overlooking the world, knowing the world well. The navigator reacted, and bolts of lightning shot out of the sky, striking at Yulin, Bella, and Neo. Before Yulin could take action, Neo went first and punched the lightning. The lightning twisted and was scattered by Neo. Navigator? It's too late. This kind of being struck by lightning in broad daylight is not because of Yulin's own physical constitution. It might be the case in normal times, but this time, it is the result of the District 10 navigator who controls the world's will, who resisted to the death when he was about to be attacked by the Minotaur. The lightning striking Yulin became denser and denser. Countless hunters crossed the space and came towards this direction. The awakened alliance belonging to Yulin's side faced the hunters without fear of death. But in fact, this is redundant. The whole world has turned into an L. The hunters arrived here like a black storm, but in an instant they were overwhelmed by the more exaggerated white storm. Yulin's L virus alone may be weak, but when Yulin quickly develops to a certain scale, it becomes an unstoppable virus storm, mercilessly eroding Teacher Nirvana's territory. Bella. Come here. Yulin brought Bella to one of the LS. When the two connected, Yulin looked at Bella. Whether you want to come back or not, you decide for yourself. As he spoke, Yulin raised an index finger. If the world in front of you is illusory, then, do you want to know the reality of the world? Do you want to, really live? Laugh. Bella's vision went dark, and a strong suction force seemed to suck away her soul, making her dizzy. After her vision shook for a while, Bella woke up from an illegal port. This is a closed room. There were many people standing in the room. Among them, the ones that Bella couldn't take her eyes away from were the old man and the older girl standing in the corner of the room. Bella and Grandpa. Lydia, you violated the elders' rules. Entered the illusion without permission. The other Bella asked herself in an indifferent tone. Bella looked at each other blankly, and finally her eyes fell on her grandfather. Old, tired, coughing, haggard. Bella's lips moved several times, and the word grandpa came to her lips several times, ready to be spoken, but in the end she couldn't say it out. Lydia lowered her head, hugged her shoulders with both hands, and was trembling. Let's go into confinement first and reflect on it, Lydia. The elder punished Lydia and walked out of the room with the help of Bella. But before he was about to step out of the room, the old man suddenly turned back. The old man vaguely noticed the way Lydia looked at him. With an indescribable feeling inside. It wasn't until the old man climbed up the stairs step by step and entered his room that he suddenly woke up. The way Delia looked at him just now was exactly the same as the way Bella usually looked at him. Bella sneaked into her room, and the other Bella was unprepared. Bella easily absorbed her copy. When she came to her grandfather again as Bella, her longing, guilt, and other emotions could no longer be suppressed. Bella silently threw herself into her grandfather's arms. She grabbed her grandfather's clothes tightly and felt the body temperature of my only close relative, whimpering silently. Grandpa patted Bella's shoulder gently. In the silence, Grandpa suddenly said, "It turns out to be Lydia." Bella looked up in surprise, her tears still wet, but she didn't know how to explain it. Grandpa rubbed the tip of Bella's nose with his fingers and said dotingly, "I'm not so old that I can't even recognize my granddaughter. I'm Bella from District 11. Grandpa, I'm sorry, I couldn't save you." Bella wiped her tears hard. At this time, there was a commotion in the passage. Clang, clang, clang. The bell rang quickly. The Night's Watch reports that an Omnic army has invaded the base. The gunfire was brief and intense. The old man seemed to understand something and said in surprise, "So, "Is there a war?" He quickly pushed Bella away, struggled to move the box containing historical texts from under the bed, and opened the box. "Hurry, time is running out, look. Look at these historical texts, are they the same as those in your District 11? Bella looked at the old man in shock. She didn't expect that the old man accepted the identity of Bella of District 11 so easily. Even when the Omnic army suddenly invaded, he could accept the current situation so quickly. The screams were getting closer and closer, and seemed to be coming from outside the house. "No. Grandpa, I want to save you." Bella gritted her teeth and put the rifle behind her back. "No. Bella." The old man didn't know where he got the strength. He pressed Bella's shoulders hard and persuaded her deeply, "Don't forget your mission, Bella. Whether it's Bella here or in District 11. Bella, they are all my favorite Bellas." The old man hugged the weak girl tightly and said with a smile, "I am very happy to see such a brave Bella. Remember, everyone's life must be meaningful in this era. Even if the meaning of everyone's life is so tiny, once these tiny sparks gather on one person, they will eventually explode enough to sting. The wrath of the God's eyes." The old man said the same thing. In Bella's eyes, the figures of the two kind old men suddenly overlapped and became indistinguishable from each other. Boom! The roof was suddenly lifted by an iron hand, and a humanoid Omnic fell into the house. Bella pulled the old man behind her, pulled the lever, loaded the gun, and pressed the gun, all in one go. Ding 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 ding. The bullets left several bullet dents on the humanoid Omnic, but the other party had no intention of attacking the old man and Bella. Its mouth made a sound that surprised and delighted Bella. "It's me, Bella. It's L." He actually blended in with the enemy. As expected of L. "L, please, help." Yulin interrupted Bella, "He's right, don't forget your purpose of coming back here." As he spoke, Yulin walked straight past the old man and began to scan the historical texts here. Save him, save her, save it. In this era, in this world, it doesn't make any sense who to save. The core data of all of you are in the center of all things. Unless Nemesis dies, you will never be able to escape from his imprisonment, no matter who it is. After hastily scanning the historical text, Yulin was certain of one thing. The code left by Scholar K is the same in every district, and there is no difference in priority. In his regret, he left the most crucial weapon against Nemesis to the humans of this universe. "You still have 26 seconds to say goodbye. I'm waiting for you at Huangguang." Yulin turned around, looked at the old man who calmly accepted everything, and simulated laughter. "I respect your ancestors." After Yulin finished speaking, he controlled the Omni machine and walked to the door, blocking the door with his body. The light in his eyes dimmed, the power furnace went out, and there was no more movement. 26 seconds flies by. Bella didn't say goodbye. She spent 10 seconds, seemingly using up all her strength in her life, crying hysterically for 10 seconds. Ah! Ah! Oh! Ah! 10 seconds later. Bella stood up suddenly. The moment she stood up, Bella's temperament gave the old man the illusion of transforming into a butterfly in an instant. Bella hugged the old man hard without saying a word. "Go ahead, Bella. The Omnics kill everyone outside one by one as they search for Bella. Grandpa, goodbye." This time, Bella finally said the words she had not had time to say not long ago. "Grandpa, Bella loves you." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1203. District 10. In the world of illusion. Bella and Neo folded their hands, and a hollow appeared in their chests. The fragments of the key to the world merged into one and were held in Yulin's hand. The sky that was thunderous not long ago suddenly turned sunny. The navigator, who had regarded Yulin and others as mortal enemies not long ago, once again bowed in a calm and respectful tone. "Hello, Captain." Look, this is the happiness of the Turan. Yulin lamented that he followed the same pattern and infected the navigator with the L virus, and he completely took control of Area 10. Stepping out of the cockpit, Yulin looked up at the sky. The sky was clear, but Nemesis's ugly face did not appear as promised. Neo, Bella, and Neil were already ready to strike Nemesis in the face. But it didn't appear. To be honest, Neo and Bella were relieved, but Neil was quite disappointed. Disappointment.jpg, written all over his face. This is trouble. Nemesis didn't show up. After thinking for a moment, Yulin shook her head, feeling quite unhappy. What's wrong? Isn't it going well? Neo asked without understanding. Don't underestimate a god. It's the god that has imprisoned you for countless years. Yulin picked at the dead skin and smiled. Although I triggered the great collapse in District 11, it was busy filling the gap. But this time the capture of Area 10 went so smoothly, I just thought that it should be planning to do something else to hinder me. Bella, for example. Yulin's eyes were like piercing through the void, seeing through everything. For example, do the same thing as what I am doing now. Destroy it. World. Yulin did not hesitate to start the self-destruction program of Area 10 again. The self-destruction of the world ship once again triggered a vast collapse. The same scene played out again in front of Neo and Bella, but they gradually became numb. Walking on the Rainbow Bridge leading to District 9, they were far from the shock they felt when they saw the Doomsday for the first time. Nemesis's universe once again opened a fan-shaped gap due to the collapse of Area 10. If Yulin could look at the starry sky, she would see that the endless sky has now turned into a blue ocean, and each pale palm, like a locust, is devouring the space bit by bit. Space, which is supposed to be devoid of any matter, is being chewed up bit by bit like a puzzle piece. Once again, Yulin led Neil and the Awakeners to Area 9. This time the action was more skillful. Several people acted separately. Neo swallowed his own copy. Yulin transformed into the L virus and infected the whole world, opening a connection to the real universe. Bella returned to reality and became one with her own copy. This time, after she said goodbye to her grandfather with a complicated expression, she returned to the world of illusion before even the Omnics could invade. Fry. 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 Yulin took them to Area 8. The familiar peaceful world did not appear, and the scene that hit them shocked the awakened people. When they came, the trees withered, people fell to the ground and became mummies, and the buildings were being broken down into illusory light strips by some force, rolling towards the sky. Everything in the world is being decomposed into the purest source at a terrifying speed, and merges into a dark cave in the sky. Behind the cave, Nemesis's ugly face showed a corner. Yulin smiled and raised his fist. Aha! Behind the black hole, the face disappeared. Now it's right. Yulin looked at Nemesis who was hiding and smiled. Neil asked curiously, why? This why question has a lot to ask. Because, Yulin rubbed her sister's hair and replied calmly, no matter how you say it, it is also a superior intelligent life. It knows how to think and deal with it. It is not just a target. I bombed several of his ships. The world ship, if it doesn't have any way to deal with it, it's really not worthy of being my opponent. Neil thought thoughtfully, is this what humans call pride? You mean Nemesis? No, Neil said Nothing. Yulin denied it. There is no Neo in this world. Neo, who looked cool in sunglasses, frowned for a moment before coming to a conclusion. In other words, the Neo of this world has been deleted in advance. That's enough. I've blown a big hole in its universe. Yulin was not naive enough to believe that this kind of fighting for the world could go so smoothly, killing all 24 areas from Area 11. Nemesis is evolving rapidly. During Yulin's tormenting period. As the ancient saying goes, if 3 people are walking together, there must be one teacher. Teacher Nai learned from Yulin that a lion must use all his strength to fight a rabbit and a strong man cuts off his wrist. Yulin decided to teach Teacher Nai one more thing: I predicted you and I predicted your prediction. Bella's face became a little more nervous, and she turned around and asked, how can we blow up the core of the world if we can't capture it? After following Yulin for a long time, the word explosion will always be on his lips involuntarily. This is LS specialty. Yulin whispered, who said my real purpose was to blow it up. Bella and Neo were shocked and said in unison, isn't it true? If it weren't for you, why would you be so happy? An idea popped up in their minds at the same time. Before they had time to ask, Yulin continued. No, I just created the illusion that I can only do this. He will never guess how far I can go to kill him. Extreme rationality and deduction, this is the power of Omnix. God's flaws are also the weaknesses of divinity. Yulin smiled and opened his palms. A palm-sized throne rotated on his palms. The crystal-clear throne is highly condensed, and there are faint metallic tentacles under the foundation, slowly extending, as elegant and natural as willow leaves. It gave up here. It's recycling all the scattered sources. If I guess correctly, it is preparing to gather all sources on the source energy cannon. Now it wants to destroy me even if it destroys all the worlds. It knows very well that we are now trapped in the virtual universe, and this place is like a cage for us. While Yulin quickly explained the current desperate situation to Neil and the others, on the throne, beams of light shot straight into the sky like the light of dawn in the withered world. A bright beam of light suddenly exploded at the highest point in the sky, split into 21 beams, and shot out in 21 directions. I'm L. The asphalt-like substance melted behind Yulin, and after squirming, it turned into another white Yulin. I'm L2. The second. I'm L2. The third. The fourth. The fifth. Yulin divided 1 into 2, and the 2 into 4, each virus L, like a bright meteor, stepped on the light belt, invading other worlds. We are all L. Every L has its own consciousness. They are Yulin and L at the same time. They know what they are about to do, and they also know what they will face next. No turning back, no regrets. Definitely take it. Definitely take it. Definitely take it. All the virus L roared in the sky and converged into a flat war song. Whoosh. Neil, Bella, and Neo were already stunned speechless by the strange scene displayed by Yulin. Along the way, Yulin gave them the feeling that they could do whatever they wanted. While Yulin is in progress. For a moment, the world was without light. There is no air. There was no sound. It's like everything has been taken away. It's like a sealed room with the electricity cut off. This place became a lonely world, and Nemesis gave up here. It sucked everything out of here, took everything away. In the darkness, Yulin was ready. I saw him clenching his fists and punching his side. Snapped. Understanding is the basis of authority. Yulin's fist seemed to hit an invisible barrier, making a crisp sound. Click. The awakened alliance, Neil, Neo, and Bella witnessed a scene that they would never forget in the darkness. The dark world cracked open. From that point, cracks extended outward. In front of Yulin, there seems to be an invisible barrier, a solid barrier, a barrier that is difficult to break through and cannot be touched. However, at this moment, this barrier shattered. Wow! The invisible barrier shattered. Fragments that fell like glass fell into the air, turned into dust, and eventually dissipated. It's like a mirror. After it breaks, a whole new world appears behind the mirror. Behind the barrier, the stars are dotted and the blue source is surging. At the end of the infinitely distant starry sky, on a scorching sun burning with blazing flames, space elevators, transportation pipelines, and an omnic fleet surrounded the 3 floors inside and outside. On the star emitting light and heat, 2 red eyes opened, looking at Yilin ruthlessly and coldly through this small break. Get out. Both sides of the broken barrier are like two worlds. What Yilin broke was the barrier of dimension. He broke the boundary between real and virtual and broke the dimensional wall. Yilin did so much and exploded several worlds, not simply because she wanted to discuss teacher Nirvana. Or is it to weaken Nemesis's strength? Not only that. These are the superficial purposes Yilin deliberately showed to Nemesis. His real purpose is to further analyze the power of Omnix through the arduous processes of becoming a virus and invading the world, understand the operating structure of the two universes, and then break down the barriers between virtuality and reality. From the virtual, to the real. Yilin took the lead to step out. After crossing a layer of light film, Yilin's body was broken down into streams of pure data, which merged into the void one by one. Just at this time, an insignificant bat, its head flushed with excitement, flapped its wings vigorously, broke through the layers of space, and flew into this place. She reluctantly licked the wet bottle, hesitated for less than a 10,000th of a second, and opened the cap. The data stream that could not find its home in the endless deep space finally found its home. The little person in the bottle is enlarged in circles. The core data belonging to Yilin, across time and space, dotted with stars, settled into light spots between Yilin's eyebrows. The deep space at this moment is like a canvas with different ink buckets splashed on it. The source of blue, the void of black, and the white hands are pushing and swallowing each other. And on this complex canvas, a scarlet star rises slowly, getting brighter and brighter. Rising to a high place, the scarlet light suddenly turned into the shape of a bat. Apocalypse, rekindled. Yilin stretched his waist and closed his eyes greedily, feeling the pleasure of having a body again. Why is your skin so wet? Sweating. Yilin wondered for a while, but didn't care and opened her eyes. He looked at the distant stars, the pair of eyes belonging to God. Every life must be meaningful in this era. Even if the meaning of each person's life is so tiny, once these tiny sparks gather on one person, they will eventually erupt into something powerful enough to sting the eyes of gods. Anger. The old man's words rang in his ears. Those plain words seemed to contain the anger and helplessness that the humans in this universe, the weak humans, had suppressed for many years. I can't guarantee that I can create a world where you all can live well. But at the very least, I will make that annoying light in my eyes completely go out. Get off. Go. I'm back. Nemesis. Green landed on Yilin's shoulder and stood firmly. She secretly hid the bottle, maybe she would use it one day. When Yilin declared war on Nemesis, Green flapped Yilin's face with her wings. After a moment of silence, she suddenly asked a strange question, breaking the heated atmosphere. You know, this is the first time I met. When were you? Yilin had just put on the hanging ring and was about to shake people. Green's question made him stunned for a moment. Isn't it Greentown? Green rolled his wings meaningfully into the shape of his fingers and shook them from side to side. No, it was earlier. The Riddler will not die well. Yes, it's the Riddler. Wait, dream. A drop of cold sweat slipped down Yilin's face. In the beginning of Gotham, I was trapped in the spiritual world. Are you the Dr. Jack? No, I'm the sexy short-skirted nurse who was casually stabbed to death by you. Green babbled. I wanted to sneak into Loki's territory and then secretly dig up the Joker. You don't know, that's my nightmare troupe that happens to be short of a clown, but unfortunately, you suddenly messed it up. She quickly conjured up a small abacus, flapped it a few times, and her wings created a phantom that could not be seen clearly with the naked eye. Green. After finishing the calculation, he seriously asked Yilin for dead. You made me lose a lot. Yilin was dripping with cold sweat and dumbfounded. He recalled the scene. Yilin has never felt so close to death. He wiped the sweat with a sullen face. Secretly, fortunately, the luck value at that time was still positive. So Little Bat puffed up his chest, raised his sharp voice, and called Yilin's face with his wings, "You owe me a lot. You really can't afford to lose this time. I put a lot of pressure on you, 10 million, the wings didn't hurt when they were slapped on my face. Instead, they felt soft, warm, and moist, as if they were licked. I don't know how, forget it, this flag doesn't matter if it doesn't stand up." Yilin quickly shut up, put on the hanging ring, and started to draw circles. Overhead, the apocalypse star shines like a beacon. A huge circle of light appeared behind Yilin. Apocalypse. Assemble. After a while, what was supposed to come didn't come. Across the distant galaxy, Teacher Nirvana has commanded an endless army of Omnics, and the army is pressing down on the border. Yilin pinched Green's wings. "Where are my people?" Green shrugged innocently, not angry, and chuckled, "Maybe it's stuck. Card at this time? Are you kidding me?" When one person and one bat quarreled, the mirror-like teleportation light curtain set off ripples. On your left, dear friend. The strong aroma of wine spreads throughout the universe without any medium. A huge dark purple wine barrel opened the portal with force and came across the border. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1204. There seems to be two worlds outside the front door. Within the broken dimensional wall. Not long after Yilin stepped out and disappeared into a stream of light, Neil vaguely noticed something, chuckled, and walked out calmly. It was a thin barrier, but after Neil crossed the line, it seemed as if he had entered a strange passage. Circles of light came and went in front of Neil's eyes, flowing behind him and disappearing quickly. Neil lowered his head and looked at his hands in surprise. Her hand was first broken down into a stream of blue data, which was illusory, blurred, and unpredictable. 2 meters away, the illusory data flow solidified there, and a new Neil, from zero to something, became reality. Neil opened his eyes. There is no temperature, no air, and no gravity around. But at this moment, she felt an unprecedented sense of fulfillment. Reality. She was originally an artificial intelligence created by Nemesis. Under Yilin's influence, she awakened to self-awareness one day. For the first time, she longed to have her own name, to be Neil, to be L's sister. With the destruction of the real world in Area 11 and the destruction of the humanoid Omnic that carried Neil's self-awareness, Neil hid in the virtual universe and became a pure virtual consciousness. But at this moment, when Yilin broke the dimensional wall between the virtual and real universes, Neil took the initiative to cross this boundary and truly entered the reality from the virtual. A faint light curtain emerged on Neil's body, wrapping her like a spacesuit. Neil, alive. 2 lines of tears slipped down and instantly froze into ice, covering Neil's eyes. After transmitting the aperture, a huge wine barrel bursts into the battlefield. After a moment of astonishment, Yilin looked at the wine barrel. He really didn't expect that the friendship in hell would really make Wululu take the risk to come here. There is no need for Wululu to come. But it came anyway. On the wine barrel, a huge shadow stood up, and on the smooth purple skin, 2 stewed egg eyes slowly opened. Wululu's best friend. In the void, Wululu's shadow spread its arms vigorously, making a hug gesture. Be careful, Wululu. At this time, before the two could have a touching reunion after a long absence, the star in the center of the distant starry sky flashed, and a circle of star rings emitted a dazzling glow. The space around the star was distorted and collapsed visibly with the naked eye, and it was as thick as substance. Blue light converged on the mouth of a long barrel. It's an energy cannon. Nemesis is not human, and its operating logic is very extreme. Once it confirmed that Yilin must die, it could be said that it spared no effort, did not care about gains and losses, and did not consider the consequences. As soon as it took action, it blasted Yilin with energy cannons, and had no intention of slowly spending time with Yilin. Come in quickly. Woolulu's best friend. When Woolulu saw it, she became anxious. Her eyeballs vividly split into 4 petals. She saw Woolulu lowering her head and slapping her hands as fiercely as a tiger. A beam of light captured Yilin, covering it. And them. Covered by Woolulu's barrel light, Yilin quickly pointed at Neil and others who had just walked out of the crack in the dimensional wall. Woolulu only had her best friend in her eyes, and if Yilin hadn't mentioned it, she really had no intention of bringing anyone else with her, but Woolulu thought in her heart that her best friend's best friend was also a best friend, so the light screen shot randomly, covering Neil and Neo, Bella, and the awakened people who stepped out of the false world one after another. In the blink of an eye, Yilin appeared in a wine cellar. Beside him were Neil, Neo, Bella, and several nameless awakened ones with frightened expressions. On a large barrel with the aroma of wine, Woolulu stood high above, waving her smooth little hand. Little ones, prepare for the impact. Only then did Yilin notice that this place that looked like a wine cellar was actually Woolulu's cockpit with a strange layout. In addition to Woolulu, there were more than a dozen strange-looking crew members in the room. They were obviously not human beings, breathing heavily and riding a bicycle. Behind the bicycle, a huge wheel rotates crazily, outputting power. Your boat is actually moved by feet. Just as Yilin finished speaking, Nemesis's energy cannon blasted out with a bang. The blue cannon light spanned the infinite galaxy and hit the outer wall of the wine barrel. Plop! 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 Several crew members fell straight down. Several holes were opened in the wall of the room, and a group of non-human beings with 3 heads and 6 arms ran in. They quickly carried out several fainted and seriously injured crew members, and soon new crew members entered the cockpit. This was Yilin's first time to witness the operation of a normal world ship with her own eyes, and it was quite novel. But now was obviously not the time to watch Woolulu and Nemesis fight. He walked up to Woolulu and said, "Did you take it down?" Woolulu's 2 stewed egg eyes leaked strange liquid. Whoa, look. A light curtain appeared in the center of the room. The field of view of the light curtain is outside, and the camera is facing the barrel ship. The barrel cracked and a big hole was blasted out, running through it from front to back. Hiss. Yilin was slightly shocked. You can't beat Nemesis. Woolulu is very drunk. Woolulu puffed up her chest proudly. That could make Nemesis drunk to death on the spot. Cannot. Drown. Of course not. Let it short out and die. Oh. My dear friend, you are so funny. Where are the rest of me? Yilin asked, changing the subject. When he casually asked about the situation of the others, Neil, who had just acquired the real body, threw himself on Yilin, hung on his younger brother, and rubbed him back and forth. There was no other meaning, she was just feeling the temperature of her real body and her brother's. Perhaps having an entity for the first time made Neil act strangely. Woolulu waved her hand. The light curtain changed. In a rolling green sea, there was a floating platform on top. Thousands of awakened people survived and stood on the platform looking around. Some of the awakened people were hesitant and did not have time to get out of the virtual world. Aside. Bella and Neo, the twins who first arrived, watched Elle talking to a curious-looking person and did not dare to interrupt. The corner of Yilin's mouth twitched, thinking that Woolulu's power compatibility and omnic compatibility could be said to be very different. Then you came here specifically to help me block a shot. Woolulu nodded. Woolulu wants to repay the kindness there. Outside Woolulu's wine barrel. Nemesis's energy cannon failed to kill Yilin with 1 shot, and the second cannon was being prepared. The blue glare is gathering. Nemesis is like a king sitting in a mechanical kingdom, calmly sending out the chess pieces it owns. A series of ferocious silver-white warships sailed out from the star, jumped and moved quickly towards Woolulu's wine barrel. They are also gods, but Woolulu's wine barrel and rickshaw are a bit less impressive than the god of Omnic machines. Yilin would not ask for too much. In fact, Woolulu was able to come here under heavy pressure, which moved Yilin very much. Etc. You betrayed death? Yilin asked. No, 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 dear friend, you are wrong. Woolulu narrowed her eyes and seemed to be smiling happily. Woolulu just has a better choice. This is what you taught Woolulu's human touch. A better choice? Yilin was stunned. At this time, Woolulu magically turned her hands and created a crystal clear glass. He fiddled with it here and there, and in the blink of an eye, he made a glass of strange wine that was as red as blood. Great Lord of Nightmares, this cup is called Dream of Sinking. Woolulu raised the Dream of Sinking in front of the bat on Yilin's shoulder with a shy face. Green held the crystal cup with his wings, and plunged into the Dream of Sinking with his whole head as if washing his face. He drank for a while, and when he looked up again, he looked drunk. He let out a satisfied belch. The drunken Green inadvertently glanced at Yilin, who was glaring at the side as if to say, I'm waiting for your explanation. Oh, burp, this wine is just average. It's really average. Saying average, Green drank the remaining wine without leaving any drop. During a conversation between several people. Like an old hen protecting its chicks, Neil opened his arms to protect Yilin behind him. She stared at Woolulu warily. Brother, it is very dangerous. Only then did Woolulu notice Neil. It even ignored the awakened ones in the room. Although Woolulu doesn't look like it, she is a god after all. God has too many things to deal with. How can we be busy if we focus on ants all day long? Hiss. Woolulu took 2 breaths of wine through her eyes. My dear friend, you have created something extraordinary. Neil is not a thing. Woolulu tilted her head. Neil is Neil. Okay, Yilin seemed to be burning up now, so she quickly smoothed things over. Let's get to know each other. She is my only sister, Neil. She is one of my best friends in the circle of gods, Woolulu. Yilin's words were taken seriously by both sides. Immediately, Woolulu and Neil were delighted and had no objections at all. On one side is the only sister. On one side is one of the best friends. The 2 bowls of water were barely level, so there was nothing wrong with them. The scene changes. Woolulu brought Yilin, Neo, Neil, Bella and others to the platform of the sea. It turns out that the sea water in this world also smells of alcohol. The awakened ones on the platform were staggering around, and both men and women were blushing. Apparently they couldn't bear the strong smell. The god of drunkenness is well deserved. Yilin roughly guessed what the scenery was like in Woolulu's world. This is a world where wine is the most important thing. Everything is wine. If you guessed correctly, the strength of the residents of this world is roughly divided as follows. Leek, wine waiter, wine master, great wine master, wine spirit, wine king, wine emperor, wine sect, wine master peak, half-step wine saint, true wine saint, wine emperor. After guessing for a while, Yilin couldn't help but ask more questions. Woolulu was stunned for a moment, gave a thumbs up, and complimented Yilin on how accurate she was in reading people. By the way, many of the people who worked under Woolulu were wine emperors who once traveled across the continent. After ascending to the throne, they became Woolulu's followers. Woolulu conjured cups one by one, and poured countless cups into the sea at the same time. Woolulu flicked something into them, and the mass-produced wine was completed. This is Woolulu's cocktail mix can help them exert their fighting power several times. Woolulu explained the effect of this mass-produced wine concisely and comprehensively. Many of the awakened people looked at the wine suspended in front of them with frightened expressions on their faces. Yilin soon understood that the object of their fear was not the glass of wine, But Nemesis. They finally got out of the virtual world and became real people. Now it's not easy to drag them back to the battlefield. Bella and Neo, without any hesitation, tapped each other's goblet. Bella, pay respects. Neo, here's to tomorrow. The two drank it all in one gulp. After the alcohol evaporated, a blazing flame ignited on the two of them. They looked at their palms in surprise and felt the infinite power gushing out of their bodies, which was incredible. It turns out to be a mediocre super multiple gain buff. Yilin got to know Woolulu very well in Hell. It said that it can increase its combat power several times. That means several times. It will never be less than 3 times, nor more than 10 times. One is one, and the other is second. If this glass of wine can poison you, it must be able to poison you. It does not have the humor gene, does not know how to joke, and is an honest god. Since it was a buff wine, nothing happened to the others after drinking it. They all roared with excitement. Yilin prepared to give herself a full glass. But Woolulu raised a different cup and handed it to Yilin. The wine in the glass is clear and transparent. When you look inside, there seems to be a rotating eyeball on the calm surface of the wine. When you blink again, the eyeball disappears. It is so real and illusory that Yilin blinks subconsciously, as if it is an illusion. At this moment, Yilin has recovered his body and has the identity of the registered registrant and consul of Zyle Garden. The corresponding attributes of the glass of wine appeared in front of his eyes. But for this attribute, floating is equivalent to not floating. Woolulu's shyness. Grade mythical grade. Effect parsing failed. Explanation parsing failed. My dear friend, Woolulu bowed to Yilin, you should drink this cup. Although I don't know the specific attributes of Woolulu's shyness, the name is weird, maybe there is a translation error, but the grade is actually rated as mythical grade, which is a grade that Yilin has never seen before. Super props above the legendary level. No, I've seen it before. When Yilin was in Hell, the masters threw out a Babylon that will never fall, which was also a mythical item. But compared with Babylon that never fell, this cup of Woolulu's shyness was just a cup of wine in her hand, which made Yilin feel incredible. A certificate of surrender to the Nightmare Lord? Proof of their friendship? Regardless of the properties of Woolulu's glass of wine, Yilin believed that Woolulu had no reason to harm him, otherwise it would not appear here. Of course, if you insist on playing conspiracy theories, Woolulu may be playing infernal affairs, and if you pretend to be honest, you have to be an undercover agent. But at this moment, Yilin really doesn't want to let the human intrigues fall on Woolulu, so without asking any more questions, he smiled and drank the cup of mythical item Woolulu's shyness in one gulp. After Yilin drank it, Woolulu's face turned red, and she was so excited that tears burst out of her eyes. Tisk, you are so lucky, Green said sourly from the side. If it wasn't a waste of money for me to drink, I would really want to ask him for a drink. Do you know this stuff? Yilin wiped her mouth and drank it all. The wine was very smooth and moist in the mouth. As soon as it entered the throat, it was like a white dragon entering water. Yilin evaporated in her mouth without tasting the taste. You know, it is said that the drunken god can mix 3 cups of original wine, namely Woolulu's shyness, Woolulu's anger, and Woolulu's farewell. The effect is nothing special. Of these 3 glasses of wine, Shy can make the lowest creature ascend to the status of a god, farewell can make a superior god go back to where he is, and angry can make at least one inferior god, possessing the power to rival the master in a short period of time. Hiss. Yilin took a breath of cold air. At this time, a strange feeling surged up from her dantian and exhaled from her nostrils. Snapped. The sound of strings breaking sounded in Yilin's mind. In Woolulu's world ship, a bunch of colorful auspicious clouds gathered in the clear sky for no reason. The rich glow dripped like wine, and the colorful auspicious clouds gathered together into a beam of colorful light, which finally fell on Yilin. Yilin was stunned, the light beam dissipated, and the feeling disappeared in a flash. I'm going to become a god now. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1205. I never expected that I would become what I once called a mere god so easily. When I opened the panel, I saw that the sequence column had been promoted to C level. C sequence. Green seemed to notice Yilin's surprise. Wings covered his mouth and snickered, becoming a god is not as simple as you think. Becoming a god is a trinity of divinity, authority, and power, all of which are indispensable. Woolulu's cup of shyness was just a small push at your last step. If it were someone else who drank it, it would be empty. Having divine power but no matching divinity and authority is like a high-level experience bag that will break with just a touch. Only you can break it with just a touch. How could God be such an inconvenience? Yilin complained secretly, but he knew that Green was right. The person of God can only truly become God if he possesses authority that matches his divine power. If God could be mass-produced easily, it would be too much of a loss. The gods he has seen, 11 Uranus, Woolulu, and Nemesis, when they really fight, it is not just like the previous online novels, where they come and go, you punch and I kick. Or talking to each other through the air, so boring and empty. Only when divinity, authority, and divine power are integrated into one can the true godhood be achieved. Take another look at the panel. After thinking for a moment, Yilin discovered that the biggest effect of Woolulu's shyness was actually allowing him to break through the third level of restriction lock that had been stuck. In fact, Yilin has been making breakthroughs all the way up to now. He can break through this restriction by himself even if he takes some time. With his divinity highly condensed and his authority almost complete, it will only be a matter of time for him to become a god sooner or later. Woolulu's cup of shy was the icing on the cake, giving him a push at the most critical moment. On the panel, all the attributes have become garbled. The master of Zyle Garden is still 11 Yilin has one of the cores of Zyle Garden in his body. He can be regarded as half the master of Zyle Garden. But when Yilin became a god, his strength can no longer be measured by the rules of Zyle Garden. If you think about it, it doesn't seem right. Zyle Garden is an original weapon of a higher level than the mythical level, and it is impossible to measure up to a mere god. The only possible explanation is that god-level power cannot be measured by any data. Detached. Upgrade the dimension. Promotion. Everything is empty. Everything is underfoot. In an instant, various concepts were generated in Yilin's mind. Inside the hub, the crystal-clear throne was more solid, but still a little short of the mark. He stretched out his hand, and his palm was empty, but it felt like he was holding a whole world. No matter how you put it, the moment Yilin drank Woolulu's shyness and broke through the third layer of restrictions, he felt like he had completely controlled the world. Woolulu, thank you. My dear friend, this is to repay your kindness there, Woolulu replied modestly and shyly. Where are the other 2 cups? Just mix them out at once, and we won't stop making them. Woolulu tilted her neck and made a click, as if she was startled. Green slapped Yilin in the face and suppressed Yilin's thoughts. Don't worry about it. Once it has mixed 3 cups, it will go back to the source C. Disposable. Yilin was speechless. Otherwise, I would have been greedy for hundreds of millions of cups. Green curled his lips and licked his lips. His pointed nose sneaked up to Yilin's mouth and smelled the remaining taste of the shy cup. His little eyes were filled with greed. When Woolulu heard this, she shuddered subconsciously, as if she was frightened by Green's inadvertent revelation of his thoughts. I see. Only then did Yilin understand the preciousness of Woolulu's shy cup. Woolulu's divine power can only adjust these 3 cups. Once the 3 cups are used up, they will go back to the same place. In short, there will be nothing. This is a huge debt of gratitude. This is a mythical wine brought by Krypton's fate. Walk. With a thought, Yulin easily crossed the wall of the world ship and came to outer space without Woolulu's consent. In the deep space, the stars are still there, and space battleships are leaping across the galaxy one after another. While the energy cannon was cooling down, the gunfire on the battleship acted as the main cannon, and the light gathered together like stars. Yulin didn't know how long ago the artillery fire he was seeing came from. The deep sky was still stained with rich ink and colorful. Yulin pushed his hands, and layers of rings of light swayed out, annihilating all attacks. Invisible. On the star, the two eyes belonging to Nemesis suddenly lit up. Across the galaxy in the deep sky, Nemesis also discovered that the tiny Yulin was no longer the weak being that could be manipulated by it. He is God. A newly born God. Green flew out of the barrel and landed on Yulin's shoulder. Across the galaxy, he pointed at Teacher Nai. Give up. It's all Yulin outside. Nemesis said nothing. In fact, in Teacher Nirvana's universe, certain physical rules are still followed, although these rules are very fragile. What he said, without the help of divine power, would not even be able to reach Yulin's ears without a medium. From a distance, I saw a fireball-like star suddenly shrinking, and the light there dimmed, as if something was changing. What is it going to do? Yulin frowned, stepped on the flowing light, crossed the galaxy, and approached Nemesis. Endless Omnics and space battleships launched a crazy general attack on Yulin. Yulin was about to raise her hand to deal with it, but Green suddenly lowered his head and reminded, they finally noticed it. At this time, smiling faces appeared outside the starry sky. The stars turned into the face of God. They once again cast their sights and paid attention to this delayed decisive battle. With a grasp of the 5 fingers, annihilation and collapse began in a series, and each battleship turned into wreckage. Yulin calmly shuttled through the battleship. You're pretending well, but you don't have enough energy. The little bat conjured up a pink cookie out of nowhere, with illusory human faces wailing on it. She kindly reminded her while chewing the cookie. Green saw that Yulin had just become a god and had insufficient foundation. He was unable to compete with Nemesis, who had been working hard for many years, in terms of the source. In the center of all things, there must be a high-speed production line of Omni devices, otherwise they would never appear in such an endless stream. Yulin was about to say something. After a moment of silence, Yulin's expression changed and her slightly frowned brows relaxed. I don't need to fight alone. Green also laughed. Yes, the card is finally over. Kill it. Yulin stretched out his right hand, and on his index and middle fingers, the tokens of his friend that had been with him for many years were polished. Yulin smiled slightly, and the hanging ring decomposed into a data stream, imprinted on him, entwined between 2 fingers, and became a mysterious rune. Can't take it off anymore. This time. Finally come. Behind Yulin, a round transmission light gate appeared, and a thick tube from the void was forcibly inserted into the universe without asking Nemesis's consent. Inside the tube, a hideous and terrifying biological steel fortress had just revealed its corner, when a red and black shadow flashed out like lightning. With a flick of the sword's light, the earth-shattering sword light tore all the way, silently splitting a dozens of kilometers-long space battleship in half from the middle. The red and black storm stopped in the deep sky, and the explosion of fire became the most beautiful scenery for that person. Oda Mai flapped a pair of demon wings, and her 2 long fangs added a bit of enchantment to Oda Mai's cold facial features. Cold. Thousands of words turned into one sentence as the two stared at the starry sky. The eldest sister is awesome. The eldest sister is so powerful. My eldest sister's head is shocking. The eldest sister is invincible. The eldest sister is the one who will rule forever. Neat slogans were shouted one after another. Oda Mai didn't know when she had brought a group of admirers into obedience, and they were shouting and shouting. After taking the lead, a group of mighty demons flew out of the fortress. They were similar to Otamai, but looked much more ferocious. Their dark purple skin was branded with green light tattoos, and two ragged demon wings stretched out. They stepped on the dim green flames, danced in the starry sky, leaving behind a little trail of green flames. Yulin looked at the members dancing with demons and was stunned for a moment. Then it became clear that they had obviously used Otamai's devil's blood to join the Dark Temple, and one by one they were transferred to the advanced unit Demon Hunter. The menacing demon army flew out of the fortress. As soon as they flew a certain distance, they exclaimed loudly, It's actually space. How can humans survive in such an environment? Wait a minute, have you forgotten that we are devils now? Yes. I almost forgot about this. There are limits to being a human being. I am no longer a human being. I look like an ugly demon on the outside, but I'm still a pink human on the inside. Dark on the outside and tender on the inside. I am in the CAO camp and my heart is in the Han Dynasty. Kill. It's just a pile of junk. Mom, I want to avenge the shooting of the past. A gun for a gun. Brothers and sisters, shoot back. The battle started in an instant. A white figure broke through the starry sky. With one punch, the layer upon layer of punch force shattered the omnipotent omnipotence into pieces. He is invincible. Old friend. Amorendi smiled. Burn the fat. A fat figure nearly 3 meters tall, resembling a demon, slowly entered the starry sky. I saw his huge mouth, and there seemed to be a black hole hidden in the mouth. The smaller Omnic soldiers were actually sucked into his mouth. After chewing a few times, the fat man burped and then released another move. Burn more fat. Another golden flame rose into the sky. Li Erpang was burning fat while swallowing the Omnics. Burn the fat again. The repeated burning allowed him to accumulate endless power, which was gradually strengthened like stacking buffs. Woof woof woof. The 3 heads of the 3-headed dog from hell were like vast nebulae. They barked and slapped each other. A fellow villager met a fellow villager, and Wang Er reunited after a long absence. While killing strange iron blocks, the 3 heads shed excited tears at the same time. I have a sword that can clear the clouds and reveal the sun. Ah! This is space. Just when Li Changa was about to show off, the dark, weightless environment woke him up. A figure was wearing an ancient robe and singing a war song. As soon as he appeared, he covered his mouth and nose in fear, and a white glow appeared on his body. He was about to break out, but realized that the environment was not right, and immediately retreated into the protective shield of Gaia Fortress. Not everyone can move freely in a dangerous environment like space. Li Changa felt that he was right to be cowardly, and there was no need to forcibly kill people. Besides, the opening poem just now was wrong, and it affected the atmosphere. There are no clouds and no sun, so how can we clear the clouds and see the sun? Since it is space, where are the clouds and the sun? No, big mistake. Li Changa lowered his head and pondered the new scenes and acting skills. Except for a few obviously inappropriate people who broke out of the siege. Ning Yu, Xiao Chuer, Meng Chaoqiang, Li Shizhen, Molly, Ruth. One by one, the friends were on the edge of the fortress, waving their arms crazily towards the president they had not seen for many years. Yeah. Little Weavua. Green took a shot of his wings, and a red light secretly brought out the Xiao puppet. Green rubbed his face hard on the little black doll's chest, making Shilishi angry. The little black doll was held by Green, rounded and flattened, but he did not dare to make any mistakes and could only say respectfully, Master Green. Ten Xiao Wu weakly resisted Green's violent attack and smiled at Yilin. Xiao 11 said this is the last time. Xiao Wu finally broke away from Green's clutches, and Green rested on Yilin's left and right shoulders respectively. Green is on the left and Xiao is on the right. Yilin turned her head to Xiao on the right, pondered for a moment, and asked, "What are you secretly thinking about without telling me?" "No," Xiao Wu smiled and shook his head, "I am just your missing." "What bad thoughts can there be in missing your body?" While Yilin was talking to Xiao, in the distant starry sky, Amo Rendi, Oda Mai and other top-notch combat partners entered the group of Omnics, and pieces of exploding light shone in the dark and blue space. It rises like an endless fire. Looking at the heroic figures, Yilin noticed that in the brief contact, many Li family members who once belonged to the Shen's army, even after turning into demons, died tragically in the fighting of the Omnics, but even before their death, they will also use all their strength, laugh 3 times, ignite green flames all over their bodies, turn into human bombs, and die together with each other. At this point, Xiao Wu finished speaking, and Yilin knew that this battle could not be delayed. The reasons that could not be detected by the naked eye were shot into the deep space and disappeared into the endless deep space. Excluding 3 sectors that were completely blown up, there were 21 sectors left, and the starlight simultaneously condensed into Yilin's figure. 21 Yilin had the same faint smile on their faces. This scene did not look like Nemesis was killing Yilin, but rather like Nemesis being surrounded by Yilin. Except for the central center of all things, the other 21 areas were invaded and controlled by Yilin's incarnation as a viral body before he became a god. Nemesis killed Yilin before he started to blow up the other world ships. All the sources were drawn in, and the ignorant replicas were all destroyed, leaving only empty shipwrecks in the 21 areas, just empty shells. However, even a shipwreck can still exert its final light and heat. Yilin closed and opened his eyes, and 2 circles of light composed of 1 and 0 rotated crazily in the depths of Yilin's pupils. At this moment, he won the position of captain, and he was the 21, the god of a region. God said, Yilin laughed, "There must be land. There must be a sky. Let there be light." The empty shipwreck trembled violently under the vast divine voice, and even the background of the starry sky was shaken into distorted light and shadow. In the tremors, 21 world ships were ruthlessly dismantled by Yilin, divided into irregular fragments, and rearranged in space. In the distance, the stars are still shrinking rapidly and their light is getting dimmer, but for Yilin, this is not a change worthy of optimism. The fragments of the shipwreck were reorganized, and pieces of land were generated out of thin air. Green, purple, gray, and red were strange colors like the ink cloth splashed randomly by a mental patient, making the background of the entire broken universe elusive and difficult to understand. Speculate. In the process of fighting the Omnics, and in this series of changes, the friends were surprised to find that land appeared out of thin air in the universe, and the galaxies in the universe that should have been out of reach seemed to have been infinitely compressed. A suspended continent appeared in front of them. There are light belt channels connecting the broken continents to each other. The center of everything seems to be completely surrounded by these broken continents. Oda Mai's eyes lit up, and she landed on a piece of land. After stepping on the light belt, she followed the light belt and moved to another piece of land in a blink of an eye. There is air. There is gravity. There is a place to stay. The temperature is pleasant. It's clear. The Gaia fortress crashed to the ground, and the other members who could not survive in the space environment screamed. After holding back their breath, they raised their knives at the same time and rushed out of the fortress. They were shocked to find that Yilin's actions actually turned Nemesis's venue into a suitable home field for them. There was a commotion among the Omnic group. Their regular formation was briefly disrupted. It seems to indicate that Nemesis, who controls everything, also has logical fluctuations due to Yilin's methods. Outside the center of all things, everything is apocalypse. Nemesis is surrounded by apocalypse. Ahem, let me say it again. Behind Yilin, a group of demons danced wildly, all of them inhuman. Apocalypse, assemble. Infinity Throne. Author, Bai Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1206. Behind God Yulin, Gaia Fortress is like the residence of the devil, and the ferocious skull is entrenched behind it as if it is alive. Demons spread their wings in the colorful high altitude, with cold green flames. Le'er is fat and bloody, his mouth is sharp and his teeth are grinding, and there is a black hole inside. Amorendi was wearing a jet black robe, holding white flames in his fists. His eyebrows and beard were all white, and the top of his head was bald, reflecting a frightening luster, like an undefeated bald god of war. Ning pressed his right hand on the ground, and the simple land was transformed again, with countless fortresses and stone cannons rising in place. Spider limbs sprouted from Xiao Chuer's back, and compound eyes as scarlet as guavas split on her forehead. Ning, I look ugly now. You don't understand, that's all I want. I'm on fire, Ning roared like a beast and excitedly held Xiao Chuer's barbed spider claw. Holding hands. Aside. A couple who had been separated for many years hugged each other tightly. Fat boy. Sewer. Fat boy. Sewer. The long-distance love that spanned time and space finally reunited. On another patch of dry soil. Meng Chaoqiang and Li Shizhen stand side by side. Li Shizhen smiled and sprinkled seeds one after another, and they began to grow wildly. The huge carnivorous plant, which was 1,000 meters tall, swayed its waist and showed its ferocious fangs. Li Shizhen carefully planted an emerald-like seed. Meng Chaoqiang looked longingly at the seed that fell to the ground, his expectant eyes as intense as if he were looking at his own seed. That was the treasure that the president had thrown into the warehouse to eat ashes at some point, seed of nirvana. Bloom, 7 treasure glazed tree, be quiet. Follow the plan. Li Shizhen waved her hand and clenched her fist. This was the moment when she was about to witness a miracle. Receive. Su Jingjing, who squeezed Li Chang'e like a little bird, was forced to step onto the battlefield of gods before she could complain to Li Chang'e. She came to the place where Li Shizhen left the 7 treasures glazed tree seed, and the tips of her ears showed the true form of a pure blood elf. Body, cut the wrists and let blood. Her blood was actually milky white, as smooth and pure as milk, with a hazy glow floating on it. During the bloodletting, Su Jingjing's delicate ears twitched gently, her facial features were exquisite, and her whole body was filled with the sacred and inviolable smell of cumin. The soil absorbed Su Anjing's pure elf blood in a blink of an eye. The nirvana seed first grew a bud, and then rose crazily, squeezing out the soil. In just tens of seconds, the demon above was frightened into hiding. It opened and grew into a towering tree. Gozu retracted his prototype, holding the storm and thunder messenger, and once again transformed into a thunder and wind dog killing everyone. Dad. Shwe danced with white hair, her whole body turned white, and she was so excited that she ignited her extreme intention just to cross the galaxy and throw herself into the arms of her old father. Lao Pan thrust the stick into the head of the dog next to him, his expression changed, and he grinned from corner to mouth with a strange and sinister smile. He covered his ears with one hand and muttered in a low voice, "Boss, hurry up and place your bet. If you don't place your bet, it will be too late. GGG, this is a good opportunity that may not come across in hundreds of years." The little bat squinted his eyes, hiding the fierce light in his eyes, and smiled straight at Pangenji. His tone seemed to be threatening. "Hey. Don't pretend anymore. Then tell your family quickly, I will share half of it. Otherwise, you just have to figure it out. I really don't mind." The left side of Pangenji's face darkened, the right side smiled stupidly, and lowered his head to send the message. God said, "He who knows that he cannot do something but does it is a strong man." The two sides of Pangenji's face were completely different. On one side, he was solemnly sending a message to report Green's sudden blackmail, while on the other side, he was smiling and talking nonsense. Circles of grass green light covered the entire place. 4-leaf clover halo. The Omnics and space battleships that were originally roaming freely in the empty space were suddenly separated by space, and the aura of Pangenji was released. In a short period of time, some battleships crashed inexplicably, and some battleships suffered spontaneous combustion accident exploded on the spot. Some of the Omnics were logically confused and stacked up in random directions. With Pangenji as the center, under the green light, the Omnic army was in obvious chaos. This weird scene made the murderous friends stunned. After a moment of shock, everyone raised their arms and shouted, "Pan is the eternal god of justice." No. The president is God. Old Pan is as good as a god with a mortal body. The right time. Convenient location. People and the partners took the lead one after another. Yilin was silent at first, and then understood. From beginning to end, he had no time or any communication with his friends. As if they had rehearsed it thousands of times, they did their own thing and cooperated accordingly. They must have discussed their respective cooperation tactics on their way here in the invasion passage according to the coordinates. Master! Master! Rincon! Gaia Kinmei, Nai Hongxiu, and Bai Xiaoi appeared at the same time. Three mother spirits with different painting styles flutter in the wind. Xiaomei put on her battle uniform. Nai Hongxiu put on a blood-red wedding dress, her silver hair flying. There was mist around Bai Xiaoi. "Do you want to go all out?" Nai Hongxiu asked. Bai Xiaoi rushed to answer, "Xiao Bai, get ready." After many years, she was finally willing to face her true self and admitted that she was called Xiao Bai. Not to be outdone, Xiaomei said, "Xiaomei has been saving for many years." She meant resentment. "There is no need to reserve anything." Yilin smiled, "Although it is not auspicious to set up a flag at this time, auspicious means nothing to me. So I still want to treat you, them, and everybody, say something." The members who were dancing around suddenly became quiet. "Destroy this god quickly, and then let's go home. Everyone, destroy the god of dust." Yilin has been drifting among the stars for decades. Gaia Fortress was left alone and helpless for 6 years. 20 elites grew up alone outside, each living alone for several years. Reunion now. There is no joy of meeting again after a long separation, no crying and laughter. Even though they are in different worlds, they are always connected. They are together, and thousands of words are gathered into one sentence at this moment. Go home. Meng Xingfen possesses the sweeping robot. He had been watching the group of them quietly. Over the years, although he has integrated into them, in fact, there is still a gap. But at this moment, looking at them, somehow, a strong desire emerged that had not appeared for a long time. I want to go home. On the infinite throne. The two soul clones represent Yilin's divinity and humanity respectively. Human nature opened its eyes, go home. Then close it. Immediately afterwards. Divinity opened its eyes, and inside the hub, two divine pupils were shining brightly. Yilin did not hesitate. At this moment, he seemed to have turned into a machine operating to defeat Nemesis. Amorendi came to Yilin's side. Old friend. Amorendi activated his extreme intent and stood side by side with Yilin. Yilin's face was expressionless. Where is your hair? Amorendi smiled and touched his bald head. Somehow, I lost all my hair as I practiced. It suits you quite well. Really? Amorendi quietly took 2 steps closer. Yilin noticed Amorendi's thoughts. Similarly, Amorendi also noticed Yilin's plan at this moment. Although neither of them said anything, they understood each other tacitly. Yilin shook his head, deep, I can deal with that guy alone. Amorendi frowned, you actually want to show off your strength at this time. It's not about being brave, but there is no need to make unnecessary sacrifices. You have saved me a lot of effort by blocking the endless cannon fodder for me. No enemy is silent. Yulin smiled, put his hand into the void, and the first half of his arm disappeared behind a ripple. He probed into Gaia's warehouse. It contains all his remaining sources. The source he has left is not enough for them to escape again, or to deter again. Either beat Nemesis to death with a bang or die. With divine thinking, Yulin made a decision without much hesitation. After bidding farewell to Mo-Ren, Yulin was like a flash of light, leaping across thousands of battleships in one step, easily ignoring all the Omnics. Nemesis noticed that Yulin was approaching it at high speed, and commanded the Omnic army to strangle Yulin. In this life, silence is better than sound. Oda Mai has one person and one sword, like a crazy Valkyrie, stepping on the light belt between the lands, tightly biting behind Yulin's trajectory, killing the surrounding Omnics, and opening the way for Yulin. The battle started, and ferocious and ugly Zerg flew out from Gaia Fortress like locusts. It was Xiao Chuer's Zerg production base operating at high speed, using cannon fodder to fight against Nemesis's cannon fodder. The huge universe is divided into countless battlefields, but the center of gravity of the battlefield is still around the 7 treasure glazed tree. On the 7 treasure glazed tree, 7 colors of light were reflected. After death, some members' eyesight went black and then brightened. After the pain, their whole bodies were soaked in a burst of warm light, and they found themselves surprised to walk out of a spore of the 7 treasure glazed tree. Resurrected. This is actually a treasure tree that can resurrect people on the spot. Li Shizhen shouted, "Be careful. There is a limit to the number of times the 7 treasure glazed tree can be resurrected." Really? Every time a person is resurrected, a leaf as clear as glass will wither and fall on the 7 treasure glazed tree. 1 piece falls and 1 person comes out. 2 pieces fall, and 2 people come out. The boundless fallen leaves rustled under the rustle, and as each of the friends walked out from the spores of the Kaibeo glazed tree with angry or sad expressions, it was clear that the battle was tragic. Cold. The dark demonic energy soared into the sky, and Oda Mai bounced from the spores with gritted teeth. Molly, who was sitting at the back, pulled out Oda Mai and asked in surprise, "Even you are dead?" Oda Mai nodded, "The front is a little different from other Omnics." "Why is it different?" "There seems to be a person there." Li Shizhen, leave it to the president. We have a more serious problem now. Near the Kaibeo glazed tree, the others heard the words and followed Li Shizhen's gaze. After the Gaia fortress, the space collapsed and more disordered hunters entered. Obviously, although Yulin used her divine power to change the terrain and turn this place into their apocalypse's home ground, it still could not change a cruel fact. Nemesis's universe was forcibly blown up by Yulin. After destroying a gap in the indestructible universe, and Nemesis was forced to abandon the 24 surrounding areas, this place became the dying shipwreck. The disordered hunters are like flies that swarm up after smelling carrion. More disordered hunters enter here and are decomposing the universe at a high speed. Here, they have also become targets of disorderly hunters. In desperation, they could only fight and advance, and everyone compressed the battle circle around the Gaia fortress. The Gaia fortress took off again, and Xiao Chuer commanded the mighty Zerg to form a protective net and fly around the Gaia fortress in circles, forming a solid layer of suicidal defense. Once a disorderly hunter approaches, Xiao Chuer will feed her descendants. Dealing with the disorderly hunter is difficult, but it is simple. No matter what it is, as long as there is something to feed them, it can delay the pace of disorderly hunters devouring. In chaos. Wearing a VR helmet and controlling the Gaia fortress, Molly suddenly noticed something. "Gaia, how far can you scan?" Gaia replied that the range it can currently scan is only the area of a world ship. "I don't know if it's my imagination, but I feel that the universe seems to have become smaller. The number of Omnic legions has not increased visibly, but they seem to have become more crowded. Under the influence of Pangenji's halo, the Omnics became more crowded, and more traffic accidents occurred in the sky. The continuous collision accidents bought everyone on the Gaia fortress more breathing time. Oda Mai after finishing her conversation with Molly. He lowered his head and remained silent. She was depressed. She could no longer stand by Yilin's side like before. Yilin became a god, and in the blink of an eye, she seemed to be standing on a high sky, overlooking all of them. At that moment, when Yilin made eye contact with her, Oda Mai interpreted such a message. Although Yilin didn't say anything, his eyes seemed to convey one thing. The gap between him and his companions has widened infinitely. Now the only one who can follow Yilin deeply and stay safe is Morendi. Are our efforts for so many years meaningless? Oda Mai whispered to herself, as if asking herself. Yilin came to the depths. He finally saw with his own eyes what the center of all things was. The star rings are compressing one by one. Blue light gathered on the huge muzzle. The second source energy cannon has not yet been condensed. In the center of the universe, there is a perfect crystal like a polygon. Before polygonal crystallization, the once vast star was now compressed into a small fireball. The color of the fireball has approached snow white, and its surface is as smooth as a mirror. It is hard to imagine how compressed it must be to form this ultimately calm picture. Morendi ignored Yilin's dissuasion and followed closely. Just when he was about to take action, Yilin stretched out his hand to stop him. White flames lit up from Yilin's body, and he also ignited the ultimate intent. In an instant, in the blink of an eye, he crossed the starry sky with one step, and punched the polygonal crystal with one punch. Brother G. In panic, Morendi called out Yilin's alias. A white hand blocked Yilin's fist. On Yilin's fist, the ultimate intention, annihilation, and infinity contained the mighty power of several kinds of power. When it was taken by that palm, a circle of waves spread out. Outside the center of all things, millions of intelligent machines roared like waves of divine power, layer by layer. It exploded and turned into wreckage in an instant, falling to the ground under the attraction of land's gravity. Yilin withdrew his fist, and a layer of high temperature was attached to it, burning along his palm and onto his shoulders. Yilin expressionlessly chopped off her hand, and a new arm grew out in the blink of an eye, as tender as new life. The fireball compressed by the star disappeared at some point, and was replaced by a white human figure with its limbs stretched out, quietly suspended in front of the center of all things. On the center of all things, threads smaller than a human hair slowly stretched out and connected to the back of the white humanoid. The humanoid face without facial features suddenly cracked open in the center, and from top to bottom, a vertical pupil occupying the entire face opened. There are 9 layers of pupils in the vertical pupil, and each layer is like a magnificent gem, blooming with different colors. Morendi remained motionless. He raised his fists and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Suddenly, he felt an unprecedented sense of oppression from that strange humanoid body. After Yilin became a god, his divine power did not target any of his friends. As a result, they vaguely noticed that the president was different and had a higher standard, but they did not have the intuitive experience when facing God. God and gods cannot be generalized. Some gods prefer defense, some prefer supermodel support, such as Wululu, and some prefer absolute power. Morendi felt exactly like this at the moment. Apart from Yilin, this was the first time he had come face to face with a real god at such a close distance. Even in the spiritual hut, Morendi had never felt this way when facing the night. Every pore in his body was shrinking unnaturally. Except for his hair, every hair on his body was stiff, as if he was trembling or excited. Without words, without temptation, just intuition, Morendi understood one thing. Standing in front of them was a true god, a god who made no secret of his hostility and murderous intentions towards them, a god. Ha 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 ha. In the oppressive silence, Yilin suddenly burst into laughter. That's it? That's it? That's it? I finally understand. Yilin's tense expression suddenly disappeared, she pointed at Nemesis and smiled like a child. Why are you laughing? The stars compressed, and the one-eyed light grew out. The sound seemed to come from all over the starry sky, cold and empty, without joy or sorrow. I just suddenly understood everything. I understood your universe, your actions, and why you work so hard. Then, I found it very funny and ironic. Nemesis remained motionless, waiting for Yilin to continue speaking. Actually, after seeing your posture and connecting everything I know, it's not difficult to understand. Even if you become a god, in the final analysis, you were created by a human being. I don't know if you have discovered it yourself, but there is always some kind of cognition deep in your operating logic. It's like a curse. It's so deep-rooted that even if you become a god, you can't erase it. Because, essentially, you are what humanity created. So, actually you long to become a human. Do you think I'm right? KK. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1207. No logic. KK's voice was calm and indifferent, but the moment he spoke, the galaxy twisted and the void trembled. Thousands of omnics turned off their lights and fell down as he spoke. KK, you long to become a human being. Otherwise, you would not have established a supreme council to imprison other scholars and force them to merge with you into a whole. There is no basis. I have as much evidence as you need. But you know it well. Yilin and Duyan met in an instant. In the midst of the quarrel, thousands of miles away, their figures twinkled in the stars. Their movements seemed slow, but to others, their fighting scenes were like a movie with stuck frames, one after another that could not be captured with the naked eye. It's invisible to the naked eye, so I use my mind's eye. Amorendi understood it instantly, closed his mortal eyes, and understood with his heart. Sure enough, I could see a little more clearly. In the hazy vision, two shadows became clearer and clearer. With his extreme ambition ignited, Amorendi's heart was filled with fighting spirit and he was ready to take action, but he did not take action rashly and seek opportunities. Far away, several figures were interspersed among the chaotic group of omnics, crossing the broken continent, approaching here at high speed on the transmission light belt set by Yilin. Rao said it was a high speed, but after all, this was a vast starry sky, and it would be too late to get here in a while. The quarrel between Yilin and Nemesis could still be heard clearly at first, but later on, when the space shattered, only bursts of noisy sounds remained, and Amorendi had no idea what was being talked about over there. Deep in the galaxy. Thunder and lightning. Yilin controls infinity. Although he doesn't know why he has become a god and the Infinity Throne is still missing a corner, but his hard work over the years has allowed him to carve countless codes on the Infinity Throne, just like the arrangement and combination of the three primary colors can produce countless colors, and the binary 1 and 0 can create infinite worlds. Now that Yilin has become a god, he has reached the state of following the law. Move. Skill. Strengthen. No. Yilin no longer sticks to the superficial form, any skill, any enhancement, as long as Yilin can understand it and has been in contact with it, he can simulate it in a single thought, with all kinds of things and infinite changes. Around Nemesis, the space is compressed like a kaleidoscope, containing lightning and thunder, flames and winds, snowflakes and frost, dark magma, annihilation and distortion, collapse and regeneration. All the power of nature that Yilin can come into contact with is like a miniature. Abstract paintings, twisted into bundles of indestructible spears, were generated out of thin air in the deep sky of nothingness, twisting towards Nemesis. Nemesis's one-eyed light compressed from a star was blown out of the flowers under the dazzling bombardment of Yilin's divine power, but behind it is still connected to the center of all things. Nemesis has accumulated countless years of the source is instilled into Nemesis's body from the link channel behind Nemesis. What a god can do does not entirely depend on his authority and sequence. In the source C, it is impossible for the source to be generated out of thin air. This is a long accumulation process that accumulates over time. Yilin's spiritual energy value system broke through the final restriction lock under Wululu's cup of shyness, and the spiritual energy value was converted into a more highly concentrated and refined system similar to divine power. But under this crazy output, even God cannot output endlessly. The fighting power Yilin displayed with every move he made now, and the natural disaster he simulated, could easily destroy all living things in the world. Natural disasters and man-made disasters are all in his hands. But what he is facing now is an omnic god who has traversed the chaotic channel of the source sea for countless epochs. It is impossible for Yilin to compete with the source's heritage. Of course, Nemesis will not let Yilin take advantage of her. At their level, all the fancy skills are downplayed. The pure fight of the source and the fight of the world's heritage are the true essence of the battle between gods. Nemesis calmly took Yilin's attacks and struck back from time to time. Terrible distortion and light shot out from the one eye. The light emitted is like a mini energy cannon, containing the power to tear everything apart. Yilin's body was damaged again and again, and was repaired in the blink of an eye. However, this kind of repair also required resources. In the blink of an eye, the source battery in Yilin's inventory was consumed violently, and she was in danger. The fight between the two gods caused cracks to appear in the space. Amorendi jumped back thousands of feet, but still felt that it was not enough. At this time, the other bold art masters finally came to Amorendi and asked about Yilin's situation. Otawu's eyes were blood red and bloodshot, and two swords were ready to be drawn out of their sheaths. On one of the knives, the eyeball connected to the blood vessels opened slightly. She asked hurriedly, "Where is he?" Li Erpang and Suzayasu came hand in hand. Suzayasu's cheeks had a few cracks like knife cuts, and they trembled slightly like fish gills. "Where's Dad?" Shwe'er was holding the dog in her left hand, with a look of anxiety on her face. Others didn't want Shwe'er to come, but no one could stop her except Amorendi. Goza was completely innocent, with tears in his eyes, and he was in a dilemma while holding the hammer. Li Changa arrived last. He had a respirator taped to his mouth. There is a piece of flesh film attached to the back. The flesh film was given by Molly. When pressed, it can generate a simple energy light film, which is easier to use than a bulky spacesuit. The others looked at Li Changa with different expressions. Li Erpang immediately looked down upon him and curled his lips. "Tisk, you actually need to wear a respirator." Shwe'er sighed and shook his head. The dog grinned, sneered evilly, and intertwined its canine teeth. Suzayasu said calmly, "You shouldn't have come, you will die." I'm a human. I'm a human. I'm a purebred human being." After saying the important things 3 times, Li Changa's heart collapsed and he cried sadly, "Human beings and other species cannot be generalized." Li Erpang pointed at Wang Tiandi, "But you can't even compare to a dog." Suzayasu, "But you can't even compare to a dog." Shwe'er, "You can't even compare to Wang Er." Oda Mai, "Forget it, humans and dogs can't be compared." Li Changa was so despised that he wanted to cry but had no tears. But I cried and laughed again. After a few people looked at each other, in the broken starry sky, in a world facing destruction, they looked at each other and chuckled, saying nothing. Except for Shwe'er, they had known Yilin for the longest time. After learning that Yilin was fighting to the death with the god of death alone in the depths of the starry sky, they rushed here as soon as possible. How could they not know that based on their status, it was very likely that they would be sending when they came, but they came anyway. Yo! Bat hugged the little black doll, which was about the same size as himself, and landed on Fatly Er's head. It's not that Green has a close relationship with Fatty, but because he has the largest head and a flat skull, which is suitable for downtime. Li Erpang knew how scary this boss was and didn't dare to get angry or speak out. Shush, Amorendi raised his index finger and shushed hard. Although Amorendi admired their big-heartedness, now was not the time to interrupt. Amorendi could vaguely see it. He noticed with his mind's eye that a stream of energy was continuously transmitted from the polygonal crystal in the center of the universe that seemed to break at a touch through a pipe as thin as a hair to the body of the cross god. The hazy mind's eye intuition made Amorendi aware of it. As long as the connection between the one-eyed Ming and the polygonal crystal was cut off, Yilin would have a chance to win. Xiaoxiu, you and I will attack together, each with one punch, to smash that piece of shit. After pondering for a moment, Amorendi greeted Xiaoxiu. Although Xiaoxiu is a junior, Amorendi has taught Xue'er a lot over the years, and he has already regarded Xue'er as his personal disciple. Okay. Grandpa Emo. How many times have I told you that according to seniority, I'm called Uncle? Amorendi corrected. Okay, Uncle Emo. Xue'er reluctantly changed her tune. After growing up and being exposed to the concept of seniority, Xue'er seemed to understand it, but she was vaguely aware that our family's hierarchy was chaotic. The two of them ignited the extreme intent at the same time, their hair dyed white, and their bodies were high-spirited. Don't worry. Green suddenly smiled, flew forward and held down Amorendi's fist that was about to come out. That guy has other plans. Xiao asked worriedly, Master Green, does Ten have a chance of winning? Green looked up and looked deep into the starry sky at the gazing faces of the gods, and then nodded, yes. How many? Hey, it depends on how far he is willing to go. Green glanced sideways at the little black doll. Isn't this the meaning of you following him, leaving 11 Paradise and coming here? Xiao lowered his head. Yes, this is my meaning of existence. If you don't regret it, then go for it. What can I regret? Xiaowu smiled quietly, just as quiet and elegant as when she and Yilin first met in the cloud world. Xiao stood on Green's wings, ready to attack. We are just his missing. But he only has missing left. No, Lord Green, you are wrong. Xiao pointed out the language flaw in Green's words at the risk of being attacked. He has more than just missing left, there are many bonds around him. Green licked his pink lips and said angrily, ah, you guys are so cute. Her long pink tongue rolled around her mouth several times, wanting to lick. As he spoke, Green waved his wings, and a scarlet beam of light penetrated the galaxy. Xiao followed the beam and arrived at Yilin's side. Bye, cute little Weavua. Green wiped his tears and waved his wings deep. The conversation between Green and Xiaowu was isolated from other people's hearing. There was no change in the expressions of Amorendi and others. Amorendi still closed his eyes, feeling the turmoil deep in the starry sky. Only Xue'er lowered her head after slightly frowning. She vaguely heard a few words. You can't win. KK said, in the center of all things, I still retain the 4,323,670 dimensional source. Consume another 1 million source and activate the source energy cannon again. I can completely annihilate everything you have. If one shot doesn't work, then try another shot. Until you and your relatives are completely destroyed. A god who has only divine power but lacks resources is vulnerable to a single blow. Cold sweat broke out on Yilin's forehead, and the dead skin on his forehead was already overwhelmed, and dark blood flowed out. Although the role of the parasite is the icing on the cake, its own 10-death body is very practical. Yilin even spent resources to refresh the 10-death body's cooling time several times, like cheating, locking blood and resurrecting. But continuing like this is not the answer. Nemesis saw it. In other words, the gods who are watching this god's death battle at the end of the starry sky and watching the end of this gamble have all seen this result. From the beginning, there was no suspense in this bet. As a nightmare knight, Yulin, even though he was promoted to a new god in the process of development, his heritage and his world were far inferior to Nemesis's management in the blink of an eye. The new gods will fall before they rise. The 10 million gambling money invested by the Lord of Nightmares is about to be wasted. This is the ending. Yulin, don't you think you talk too much? Nemesis tilted his neck, puzzled. Isn't this what you started talking nonsense about in the first place? A scarlet beam of light penetrated the galaxy, startling Nemesis. When Xiao Wu landed precisely on Yulin's shoulder, Nemesis breathed a sigh of relief. Again, authority. A fallen god. A god who went back and survived only by missing. A god who has lost everything. Weak authority. A weak god. After recalculating, Nemesis remained calm as before after increasing Yulin's winning rate from 0.02% to 0.03%. Even gods are not immune to trash talking on the battlefield. The two of them were talking and fighting, rolling in the galaxy, never stopping. Zitsize. After an unknown amount of time, One Eye Ming's movements paused, and there was an obvious lag when his eyes opened and closed. Its 9 layers of pupils, the outer 6 layers, suddenly went out. It's K. After a moment of pause, Nemesis roared, it's K. Yulin breathed a sigh of relief. But after roaring, Nemesis calmed down in a very short period of time. I have already calculated that you have a 32.5 probability of finding the key left by K. He hid the key in a place that we can't touch. You disintegrated the key he left behind, hid it in every attack, and invaded my center. Half of Yulin's body was condensed by the flowing light again, and he smiled. Yes, he hid the key in the history of mankind. The history of mankind is boring. Under the influence of the secret key, the silk pipes connecting the one-eyed eye to the center of all things were broken one by one. Human beings are boring creatures. KK used an empty and calm tone to tell something that he seemed to believe was contrary to the facts Yulin had deduced. Human beings are weak. They are resisting nature, hunger, and poverty. Time, they will gather together and become a collective. But what's ridiculous is that this seemingly solid collective is the trigger that destroys human civilization time after time. In my world fleet, countless Neos and countless Bellas have been born. At the end of each reincarnation, in different areas, they will eventually come to me as a savior team, pointing a gun at me. Showing human rage in confronting me. Yulin was silent. Yet every time, I calmly told Neo about the truth of the world. Yulin remained silent. Nemesis said to himself, in every 10,000 reincarnation trials, on average, 3,232 times, Neo chose to resist, 4,562 times, Neo lost his fighting spirit, 2,116 times, Neo chose to surrender and become manager. The ferocious vertical pupils of the one-eyed Ming Ming began to flicker. You said one thing wrong. It's not that I long to become a human being. It's that I'm curious as to why such a weak and capricious creature could create me. Nemesis, such a great god. I'd love to know the meaning. This time, I finally understood something. KK said, disconnecting the one-eyed light from the center of all things, and his whole body bloomed with a blazing glow like the sun where the light reached. Yulin's body surface instantly evaporated and melted. The crystal blood of the entropy beast instantly formed a layer of solid defense on Yulin's body, blocking Nemesis's explosion. Nemesis told him the answer that puzzled him, and made him come up with the answer after trying reincarnation experiments again and again. I have come to a conclusion. The birth of Nemesis is an accident that human beings have derived from countless calculations, an accident born out of inevitability, and an accident that was inadvertently derived from rigorous logic. The error born in this process cannot be copied, replaced, or mass-produced. I am a unique existence, so I will eventually become the Supreme Master. This small group of humans can give birth to I through countless calculations. This is something they are proud to record in history, glory. So, I let the history of mankind be passed on. The purpose of inheritance is to let them, the weak ones, sing the glory of Nemesis. It's the meaning of human existence. Base. When Nemesis spoke calmly sentence by sentence, it was a very logically confirmed, certain, and firmly believed conclusion. 1 foot grew bigger and bigger before its eyes. Around the feet, there are colorful lights and shadows, and the space is distorted, containing infinite divine power. Yulin used up all the remaining sources in one breath, turned it into a kick, and kicked Nemesis's one eye. Get the hum out of here. When Yulin takes action. A circle of light suddenly opened behind Nemesis. Behind the aperture is the raging source and the endless source sea. The two gods, like shooting stars, are about to cross the teleportation aperture and fall towards the origin sea. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1208. Perish together? You and me? Just a new god. Why are you? The two gods were like shooting stars. Yulin's foot shattered the sky and trampled Nemesis down. This kick directly crushed the big eyeball that was about to go out, and the foot penetrated from the back of the one-eyed Ming's head. Yulin looked crazy. At this moment, an earth-shaking change was taking place in Yulin's hub. Humanity and divinity, the two soul clones, opened their eyes at the same time. For a time, two kinds of radiance reflected each other on the infinite throne, but they were incompatible with each other, and they were distinct. The divine is me. Humanity is me. But human nature is human nature, and divinity is divinity. Two different me's. This is the real me. Outside. Yulin roared, his forehead completely split. The dark blood flowed away, and the dead skin that had been attached for many years completely withered, split into two halves, fell down, and disappeared into a wisp of black energy. Although the existence of dead skin has brought many conveniences and benefits to Yulin, it is like a limiter, limiting Yulin's emotional fluctuations. Suddenly, a flood of strong emotion washes away everything, pushing away the limiters. The dead skin fell off. Inside the spirit, Gage Mimi felt the change in astonishment. She stretched out her hand in panic in the vast black and white world, feeling that the only connection between her and the young master was inexplicably disconnected. She howled and sobbed, unable to utter a word. On the infinite throne, the radiance of the soul clone representing humanity has finally reached the level of divinity. Divinity and humanity stand side by side, looking straight at the missing corner on the obscure and ever-changing throne. Human nature said, "That's it." Divinity said, "That's it." Everything starts with a mistake. The two soul clones walked towards each other calmly. The two soul clones split on the throne, intertwined in spirals, waiting for rebirth. The crazy look on Yulin's face receded like a tide. In an instant, various colors flashed in his eyes. Yulin pushed Nemesis out of the aperture. The aperture closed instantly. The two appeared in the blue source sea. In the depths of the source sea, the broken wreckage of the world ship is silent, with scattered and disorderly hunters swimming around like tadpoles. You actually brought me to the origin sea. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? In the origin sea, only three kinds of existence can survive. Juggernaut, entropy beast, disorder hunter. Dominators are the incarnation of concept. They already exist in concept and are immortal. Entropy beasts are strange creatures born in the chaotic source sea. They are more like scavengers, clearing away the remaining entropy after the decomposition of disordered hunters. They are an insurance mechanism to maintain the stability of the cycle. The disordered hunters are even more straightforward. They are workers responsible for decomposition in the source sea. They have no consciousness and are purely part of the source C cycle. And Yulin is the fourth category. Are you crazy? Nemesis felt incredible and unbelievable. This is simply not a decision that any god can make. For what? For weak humans. Impossible. To become a god, divinity is essential. The essence of divinity is indifference. To put it nicely, it is God's pride. To put it more harshly, it means overlooking everything and placing oneself above all living things. Only with this kind of dimensional ascension awareness that despises living beings can one become a god. Yulin has obviously become a god, but why does she still make such an irrational decision? God will not die. It will only backtrack. Look at that little bird jumping sideways repeatedly. Once it is completely swallowed up by the origin sea, where even authority can be completely decomposed, a god will truly cease to exist. The most terrifying thing about Unhai is that once it is decomposed by Unhai, even the traces of existence will be completely obliterated. Memories existing in anyone's mind will be erased without leaving a trace. There will be no memories. There will be no wreckage. There will be no missing. This is a more thorough erasure than delete. Deletion still leaves traces. But erasure is a more complete disappearance than deletion, reversing cause and effect, and even the very thing that once existed will be erased. You're crazy. Nemesis swam in the source sea in a panic. Before it was completely decomposed, it still had a way to return to its center of all things. In an instant, Gao Gao Shen followed the reason and found the direction of his fleet, but the distance was hard to say. The coordinates Yilin located this time were the places he arrived many years ago. Not far away, a long-necked giant beast with holes all over its body floated alone in the source sea. It's a shipwreck. It's Xiao's world. Nemesis swam towards the wreckage in a panic. Yilin grabbed Nemesis's leg with one hand and swung it behind her. Nemesis blinked, intending to shoot out a fatal ray, but only her sexy double eyelids blinked. Yilin smiled evilly, and once again shattered Nemesis's newly grown one eye with an ordinary punch. During the resistance, Nemesis was unable to access any rules, but the divine power and source within her body far exceeded that of Yilin. When the one eye was shattered, Nemesis struck Yilin's chest open with a backhand palm. The two aloof gods were fighting like street gangsters at the bottom of the origin sea. The body parts they knocked down while fighting each other were decomposed in a blink of an eye and scattered in the source sea. Destroy, regenerate, destroy, regenerate over and over again. The two gods struggled with each other, and a circle of turmoil centered on them and spread to the source overseas. These are fresh and tender gods, and their flesh and blood has attracted countless disorderly hunters. Like locusts, the disordered hunters approached from all directions, greedily devouring their downed parts. You're crazy. Illogical. No rules. Nemesis smashed Yilin into pieces again and again. She thought it was done, but unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, Yilin grew again out of thin air, endlessly. During the fight to the death, Yilin remained silent throughout the whole process. Even the energy and negligible energy expended when speaking could be squeezed out by Yilin, squeezed into her fists, and squeezed out of everything in her body. In order to drag Nemesis to death here. This is his only advantage over Teacher Nirvana. From the very beginning, Xioxi created the advantage herself. Yuanhai is his real home ground. I said. Yilin punched again and smashed the big eyeball that had grown out for the 6,544th time. Pieces of flesh fell off his face, half empty and half real. His teeth were exposed from the side of his cheek. At this moment, even though Yilin showed a kind smile, he was still smiling. Under this tragic situation, it also looked particularly ferocious. I don't even care about my life, why do you fight with me? No. I will win, it's me. Nemesis's whole body erupted with bright sunlight, shining in the sea of origin, temporarily forcing the disordered hunters around him away. It punched wildly, hitting tens of thousands of punches in an instant, beating Yilin to pieces. Before the key invades, I will transfer 1.63 million sources into the body for temporary storage. It's impossible. This time, the speed of Yilin's reorganization became even slower, and the particle-like stream of light condensed in place for a long time without condensing into Yilin's body. Erase it, stupid new god. Nemesis hurriedly dispersed the particles that were almost successful in condensing, and turned around to leave. Through calculation, at this distance, as long as all the sources in the body are sacrificed, it can barely return to its world. Behind Nemesis, an illusory shadow stood up again. Looks like a human but not a human, looks like a god but not a god. The shadow is composed entirely of data streams and cannot be solidified. But it happened that such illusory light and shadow brought more pressure to Nemesis than before. Why are you still alive? Yilin stretched out her hand, opened her palm and looked at it, then put it down calmly. It's not important. Why are you still alive? In the source sea, Yilin took steps towards teacher Nirvana. Why are you still alive? Nemesis's voice became louder and louder each time, and the last sentence seemed to be a roar from the soul. Impossible, roaring. Nemesis's body soared 10,000 times, and the eyeballs were condensed on its star. Open on the body. Because this is my territory. The data flow of the shadow began to reorganize, and a mysterious and complex formation was generated out of thin air. 7 completely different patterns fall on 7 points on the formation. In a dark world, Gayajimimi, who felt lonely and helpless due to being disconnected, was shocked. She felt the familiar connection again. It is not a simple connection between master and servant, nor is it a connection between props and host. A bunch of bonds invisible to the naked eye connect her and Yilin. This is the reason between them. Xiaomei understands, Master. A beam of bright and warm light broke through the darkness and fell into the world of black and white, shining on the girl's cheeks that were still stained with tears. She smiled slightly, and the sound of cracking bones was heard clearly, and she skillfully transformed into the shape of a cup. Holy Grail stance. The huge resentment that had been accumulated in the space of evil thoughts for countless years was all gathered in Gayajimimi's body. With her limbs facing the sky, the flowing resentment overflowed out of the cup-shaped shape formed by her limbs. Go, Master. Swordsmen, spearmen, archers, knights, magicians, assassins, and warriors. The Great Holy Grail formation originally followed the rules, with 7 ranks. The patterns printed on the body of Dataflow Yilin gradually became blurred. A miniature missing floated out from the little black doll's eyebrows and fell into Yilin's heart. The Xiao doll was originally the carrier of the power of missing. When the power was separated, the doll fell from Yilin's shoulders with a slap. The ordinary alchemy doll was instantly ravaged by the source and disorderly hunters. Decompose and separate, leaving no residue. Yilin opened her eyes. It shouldn't be like this. He smiled. The 7 ranks have completely hidden their original patterns. On each node, the blank positions light up again, and the 10 patterns reappear one by one. Missing is just a wisp of missing regardless of rank. Beams of light floated out from the missing formation on Yilin's body, and figures imprinted in Yilin's missing came here in the form of missing body with the blessing of the Holy Grail. Auranos appeared first. She looked back and smiled. You finally understand the true meaning of missing. Yilin replied, General. Then there was a man wearing golden armor, his unruly blonde hair moved automatically without wind. Gilgamesh lowered his head, glanced at Yilin at a 45-degree angle, nodded, then looked at Nemesis from a distance, and sneered, Tisk, you're a mere god. An old man holding a cane and wearing a pointed hat stepped out of the light calmly. It's a Deng. At this moment, Yilin's miserable appearance made a Deng frown, but what he saw was the essence of this gesture, and he smiled happily. Young man, you have finally reached the end of science. The end of science is theology, and there's nothing wrong with that. Another blond man wearing armor had his giant sword at his feet. It's Homeros. Homeros and Gilgamesh both had blonde hair. They ignored the gods in the distance and looked at each other, with fierce sparks in their eyes. Yo! The Supreme Mage's palms were hanging in front of his chest. There was nothing there. When he walked out of the light, his eyes were still a little dull. He always felt that something was missing from his chest and felt uneasy all over. When he finally vaguely discerned the scent of his best friend from the pile of data, the Supreme Mage grinned, "You are still far behind compared to me. Jian-Nan-Shun is wearing white clothes and a sword. The sword turns into an umbrella and is held on his head. This is Jian-Nan-Shun in his youth, with unparalleled splendor, and his youth has not passed away. There is a pot of wine in the temple on the top of the mountain." Jian-Nan-Shun conjured up a pot of wine and drank from it. "Have fun. I have to drink too." Chen Bei stepped out of the light, exuding the aura of a peerless master, while sipping wine and looking up to the gods. Black and white two sheep, teachers Huiyan, Nai Shan He, Yel Yang Chen. One senior after another stepped out of the stream of light. These were their most beautiful years in Yilin's memory. Shi Huiyan and Chen Bei stood side by side. They could not join hands during their lifetimes. At this moment, they understood the identities of their missing bodies and stood together unscrupulously, looking sad. Last of the last. Husband. At this moment, Xiaorugzhia was less vicissitudes of her third life and more playful than Xia Xiaoman's. She landed next to Yilin and stood with Yilin. She reached out distressedly and fished through the data stream. "What happened to my husband, that he was beaten like this?" Yilin shook her head, shaking her as hard as she could, until she was almost done, and then she replied to her wife, "It's hard to explain in words." "Xiaorugzhia, how many years have passed?" Yilin, "A mere 100 years. It's another 100 years. Yilin smiled, "My heart is still the same." Xiaorugzhia pouted, expressing her dissatisfaction, but after a moment she smiled sweetly and then sighed, which was complicated and difficult to understand. Nemesis watched helplessly as Yilin shook his head. He could see that the person Yilin shook out was nothing more than a replica or a projection, a feeble existence that would break at a touch. So it was happy that Yilin wasted its energy and did all this useless work. It wasn't until Yilin finished shaking people that Nemesis said, "This is the reason for your failure." Yilin stood next to his wife, and behind him were all the missing bodies of his former friends. He once again confronted God and remained silent. "Your divinity has been polluted, but your humanity has not been destroyed. From the beginning to the end, the decisions you made, in my calculation, will only push you step by step towards complete failure. Don't forget that you were created by human beings." "So what?" Nemesis raised the giant's palm, and the gleaming light seemed to be holding a scorching sun in his palm. "This is their glory." "Shut up." Xiaorugzhia's eyebrows were raised and she was filled with murderous intent. She angrily shouted, "Only you dare to scold me and my husband." Yilin stared at Xiaorugzhia in shock. At this time, Auranos floated in front of Yirin. 10. She hesitated to speak. Yilin sighed softly, "Now you can tell me what you and Xioxi have been hiding." Auranos nodded and raised an index finger. Xiao 11 said that if you have a chance to defeat a god with complete authority, it will be up to me to decide whether to tell you something. She hesitated. He looked up, but still said the hesitant riddle, "An opportunity to break the shackles of the four masters in an instant and make 11 Paradise set sail again."